In the Odyssey app at The Fan Rochester, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan Rochester, an Odyssey sports station.
It's time to start the show and talk about the sports we saw. Inside jokes and takes from Danger and Battaglia, Bills and the Sabres and the Amherst. Who gave a microphone to these jerks? Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. With Danger and Battaglia.
Hey, very good afternoon to you as we welcome you on into Rochester's only local sports talk show. This is the Sports Bar, Danger and Battaglia. Glad you're with us and listening along at 95.7 FM, AM 950, the free-to-download Odyssey app where we sound our best, looking our best on our YouTube channel. We stream every afternoon from 3 until 6, The Fan Rochester on YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe while you're there and also share it with a friend. We're also on Twitch and your smart device when you ask it to play 95.7 The Fan. I'm Danger. That's Battaglia.
And the answer is yes. Uncle Gino has Luke Bryan tickets to give away today. So
yeah, big show, right? Luke
Yeah.
Bryan's always a party. He's coming to Darien Lake on August 30th. You can get tickets at livenation.com or you can listen to the Sports Bar this afternoon. We'll give away a free pair of tickets sometime between now and 6 o'clock. We got a great show lined up for you this afternoon. It's a Tuesday, which means we'll be talking Buffalo Bills with our buddy covering the team for the Syracuse Post-Standard. That's the great Matt Perino.
yeah, flu bug going around, right? And so I'm talking to our friend Russell Brown from he formerly of Cover One. Now he's doing draft work, and he gets down to Mobile. And he's under the weather. So we had to move his appearance off yesterday because can you imagine traveling all that way? Matt Perino coming back from Kansas City, and it was this time last week he could barely get out of bed. Matt is back. He is healthy, and we can certainly talk about how the season ended, but with the news coming out of Cleveland yesterday, it seems like we've kind of gone into full off-season mode here in West New York. I'm totally fine with that looking ahead. Matt Perino, Syracuse Post-Standard Shout podcast coming up at the bottom of the hour.
All right, we'll hear from the Amherst again coming up here on Friday. Michael Leone, Amherst head coach, stopping by the Sports Bar at 4:25.
So do we ask him about what his thoughts are in Buffalo? I mean, the story in Buffalo tonight is, hey, turns out Tage Thompson isn't good to go. He's now day-to-day, where we're kind of led to believe that he was going to be fine after that hit. He is not going to be available in the lineup tonight. So what do you know? You have Yuri Kulik and Isak Rosén on the same line tonight. They're actually going to try that.
The Seth Appert effect is real. That first line of Peterka and Quinn, not Quinn, rather, Peterka, Kulik, and Rosén is going to be a lot of fun.
Well, if this works, Danger, you should look to the future, should you not at this point? The playoffs are gone. They're gone, everybody, okay? We're not going to – if you bring it up, I'm not entertaining it. You should look to the future. I'm not telling you to get invested in Buffalo Sabre hockey, but it's kind of fun to see the Amherst kind of go up there and see what they can do tonight against Columbus.
Yeah, it'll be a good time. That will be tonight here on the Fan Rochester. Michael Leone, Amherst head coach, stopping by the Sports Bar at 4:25 as usual time here on Tuesday afternoon. Is there in their all-star break at the AHL level. But the Amherst getting back on the ice coming up here on Friday, and we'll pick his brain on the home and home against Syracuse last weekend. The Amherst are on fire right now, 4 straight wins.
It's a lot of fun watching Amherst hockey. You get Belleville, and Belleville is at the bottom of this division. It's hockey. Certainly, you got to take every opponent seriously. But for one game this weekend, all right, you got to put your foot on the pedal. You got to get the 2 points coming up Friday night.
Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub Wingman line is open for you. You can pull up a stool and join us anytime this afternoon in the Sports Bar. We love engaging with you at 866-4FAN, 585-866-4326. Award-winning barbecue from Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub, 135 West Commercial Street in East Rochester. GoodSmokeBBQ.com. Feel free to call and tell Gino he's nuts because when news of Cooper Kupp being told he was going to be traded, Gino immediately said... No.
Well, I'm listening to Brownie and Tasker, as I always do, and they're running down the odds, which we can't play in New York State, of course, but it's just kind of a fun talking point where I never would have had on the future market, where would Cooper Kupp go? The Chargers being number one. Okay. that coupled with Myles Garrett, yeah, the Chargers are going to have money to spend. The Chargers in that market, they need stars. They're going to go after somebody. And Cooper Kupp with the Chargers would certainly be interested. It's just a very simple. Why would anybody think that the Bills' offense would need this? You scored 30 or more points, 7 straight games. This offense does have an identity, and it's not winging the ball down the field. It's running the ball and controlling the clock. And what I saw out of Josh Allen this year, I saw a confident quarterback that didn't have any one particular receiver in his head. The mantra everybody eats, it's more or less, hey, Josh, just go through your progressions. So for Cooper Kupp, would he be a nice addition? I'm not saying he wouldn't be, but these things don't come for free. $20 million a year, you would figure, not this year, but next year under the cap. But on top of that, the Rams aren't just going to give them away for free. So that's kind of where it ends for me.
Right. Now I understand where you're coming from there. And when you put it that way, it's hard to imagine that it's actually the offense that needs a significant upgrade this offseason. Scoring 30 or more points in 7 straight games should be enough for you to win the majority of those games. And for the Bills, it was. The defense was the issue. We've discussed it. We need playmakers on both sides of the ball, but specifically that defensive side of the ball needs a good 1 to 2 difference makers. And we're for as excited as we were at the prospect of Myles Garrett being on the trade block yesterday, the thought of Cooper Kupp being on the trade block and joining the Buffalo Bills, a little less enthusiastic. And I try to think, okay, like where realistically, you mentioned the Vegas odds for Cooper Kupp, and we talked a little bit about where Myles Garrett could go yesterday. I like the idea of Garrett coming to the Bills. Cooper Kupp to me feels like, okay, that's a Dallas Cowboys, Carolina Panthers kind of move.
Well, you go through the list, and who's not paying a wide receiver $20 million a year? Like, that's kind of where it starts, right? Like, to put Kansas City at one point decided, no, we really can't afford Tyreek Hill at this rate.
The Chargers did the same thing. They had 2 $20 million receivers and got moved off of both of them, and ended up making the playoffs the year after they did that. So, the Chargers make sense, but does that seem like the kind of move that Harbaugh's a run-first guy? And is he going to invest $20 million in Cooper Kupp? Nice player. Really nice player. It'd be an upgrade from what you already have in Buffalo and Khalil Shakir. I feel like they're similar players, guys that the ball comes in, it doesn't come out. You target them, they're usually going to make that catch.
What's interesting about this, though, is, okay, so they're exploring this, but the way they put it out there to him, and maybe that's doing the player a favor, but why wouldn't just keeping him be an option here? Unless they know they've already kind of tested the waters here, like, okay, we know what the market value would be. I think you're overestimating your scouting department, too. You got lucky with Puka Nacua. You really did. Don't tell me that you knew he'd be there, in the later round. Somebody else could have grabbed him at that point. So if you're relying on your prowess to identify the next Puka Nacua, I would just kind of say good luck. Oh, and by the way, Matthew Stafford's going to be a year older here, too.
But he is coming back. As far as we know, he's coming back. We imagine that he's coming back with the Rams. I know there's some scenarios where he would maybe be – I'm trying to remember what I read about the scenarios for Matthew Stafford in terms of his ability to stay with the Rams. It's like he'd probably stay with the Rams or not play at all is the way it looked to me.
And honestly, I thought he was pretty good last year. That's why I'm kind of surprised that they're going down this path. I thought maybe they would run it back one more time and maybe things break for you in the postseason.
Dude can still throw, man. I mean, he still has one of the prettiest throws in all of the game. With Stafford, I worry about the same thing that I worry about and we saw with guys like Kirk Cousins, just older players that Aaron Rodgers certainly fits the bill here. Older players that when you see them on the field, it's like, oh yeah, the age is starting to show up a little bit. You're not as mobile. Not that they were ever that mobile in the first place, but they look tired. They look tired as the game goes on.
Listen, Dave, we haven't even broken down what we want and desire in the draft, but it's positionally for the Buffalo Bills. Sure. Would it be fun to draft a wide receiver? Absolutely. Do they need one? Sure, I would kind of say. But the priority before we get to the draft should be, how do you improve this defensive line? How do you get better in the secondary? I'm talking about the safeties. I'm talking about corner 3. I'm certainly talking about who you can upgrade over Von Miller, because I think Von Miller the Bills should move off of. 866-4FAN, 866-4326. Joe in Caledonia starting us off here. What's up, buddy?
Hey, guys, how you doing?
Hey,
Go
Joe.
Bills.
Go Bills.
Hey, listen, hear me out before you yell at me and hang up.
Do we have a
talking about
reputation,
Miles.
Joe? Do we have a reputation for doing that? I didn't know that we had.
No.
Joe, I'm going to yell at you.
I think what you're going to hear me say, you're probably going to want to disagree immediately, but hear me out. I love Myles Garrett, great player. But what do you think about this scenario? We send Josh Allen to Minnesota for this McCarthy kid, Jordan Addison, and a couple number ones and a couple number twos. We turn around, send the ones or the two, something, whatever it takes to get Max Crosby from the Raiders. Now we got this young, hot quarterback who I think is going to be sensational. We got Jordan Addison to team with Keon Coleman and Shakir to go with our young Dalton Kincaid. And now we're sitting on another 1, 2, possibly 2 ones to do some more damage in the draft with. We get Allen out of the AFC, and we do a little bit of a rebuild without taking too far of a step back.
Oh, my gosh.
Joe, God bless you.
Are you trolling us? You're
Here
trolling
we
us.
go.
It's
No,
good.
You're trolling us.
The
It's good.
biggest Bills fan you'll ever meet and love Josh Allen.
I love it,
So,
Joe.
you know what? Maybe it's time for us to take a step back and think about a rebuild, because obviously what we have is not getting done, and we're wasting this guy.
Yeah. Well, I think, Joe, the step back, you know what? Luke from Rochester called with something ridiculous a couple of weeks ago. We banned him from the show. Joe, we're not going to do that for you. You made me laugh. That was amusing.
At least he said you're going to hate
Yeah,
this
that
take.
was- there's some
And
self-awareness
you're
there.
You're right, Joe. I hate that
Some
take.
self-awareness there by Joe, and I appreciate that, Joe. And thanks for the call, and thanks for listening. Couple of things. They're not moving on from Josh Allen. Are you kidding me? That's not a discussion. We had fun at the expense of Ryan Hickey last year, who believed the same thing that Joe did. Like, hey, it's only going to get more expensive to have Josh Allen as your quarterback, and you can build around your quarterback if you get a guy that's on a rookie deal, and you can. That, in theory, all makes sense. But then you look around the league, and you see that there are a lot of teams struggling to find what the Bills have, which is a franchise quarterback. And it's not J.J. McCarthy. We don't know what he is going to be in the NFL. I appreciate what you're saying. I appreciate the logic behind it. It's like the same thing as somebody who calls and says, fire Sean McDermott. Really nice that you're saying that. It's not going to happen. I'm not saying it's never going to happen. I'm saying it's not going to happen. Not now. Not with this quarterback. Not with this regime. It's not going to happen.
The reason the Bills have not gotten to the Super Bowl yet, playoff losses, it's really only the Cincinnati game where I thought, Josh, okay, that you're a top reason here why this team didn't win. You mean to tell me because Josh Allen couldn't put up a 5th touchdown in Kansas City and the offense, that was the reason why? Look, I appreciate different thoughts and different takes, but I don't even want to entertain that. I'm sorry.
I think we're maturing a little bit. I didn't lose my temper once at Joe. I just kind of laughed at Joe a little bit there.
Younger Gene would have, as I talk about myself in the second person, would have hung up on him. I would have definitely.
Yeah.
I definitely would have.
I think the difference is Joe has self-awareness. Luke from Rochester had zero self-awareness and has a continuous drum to beat, which is why he's been banned. Joe is not banned. Joe is not banned from the sports bar. That was a bad call. That was a really bad
But
take.
the irony about Luke, and if you missed it, Danger banned him from the show when Luke, this was after the Ravens win, talked about because of the first 2 series and the win over Baltimore in a divisional game against one of the top defenses in the league, said he couldn't wait for Brady to move on. The irony here was that if you had to say reasons why the Bills lost to Kansas City, it was the Spagnuolo-Brady matchup, I thought. Right at the top, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that call. Oh, and of course, because we were patient, we took Joe's call and listened to that ridiculous take. One of our regulars on X at the Fan Rochester, a guy you know, Brian the Big Timer Brian.
Oh, Big Time Brian.
Gene should have big timed that guy. Brian suggesting that's a guy you need to big time. I like that. Oh, boy. Now they're just piling on. Chris in Kentucky. What ought to happen to Joe? You are banned. No, I'm not banning Joe. I don't want to ban anybody. We're nice here in the sports bar. We're cordial. We invite you in, but we do try to set a tone and a standard, and we want you to call in with, reasonable and coherent takes. That was not one, but Joe knew going in that was something that we were going to yell at him about. We're not yelling at you, Joe, but that's ridiculous. Josh Allen isn't going anywhere. Not going anywhere. They're not trading Josh Allen.
Greg writing in, I don't think Kupp would be a Buffalo guy. I think he wants to be in a more pleasant weather location.
Tell me about it. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
To that end, they're all out of town right now. Like, who other than guys that might be on rehab are actually kind of staying around?
I'm jealous. I'm right there with them. I can't wait till I'm doing the same thing that they're doing right now. So I don't blame him at all. Greg, thanks for that. Is he a Buffalo guy? I don't know. I think Kupp comes across to me as I want to go someplace where I can compete, and $20 million a year is a pretty good chunk of change. The way it works out with his deal this upcoming season, $12.5 million in salary, $7.5 million in a roster bonus. $5 million of that bonus is fully guaranteed. So the new team could want him to take less as part of a trade. If that were the case, he could refuse that trade, and then the Rams would have to pay Kupp the full $20 million, or they could cut him and owe him the $5 million in guarantees. But it appears that the days of Cooper Kupp being a $20 million a year receiver are over based on this news from yesterday.
Do the Chiefs splurge on that?
Do the Chiefs go after Cooper Kupp? Yeah, I'm gonna hold firm and say that Cooper Kupp feels like a Cowboy or a Carolina Panther to me. I don't know why, but it just feels like I know I don't have anything to back this up. It just feels like that's where he would go. That he would go to either Dallas or Carolina. And I guess you can't rule out the Chargers. He's already there in LA. That makes sense too.
I think, and I've seen a lot of Lions fans saying, but look, be honest. How do you fit him in there? Is there enough on the offense there to get him the targets? He would look great across from Terry McLaurin. Oh, my gosh, that would be with Jaden Daniels. If Washington made that move, then we're talking about, okay, if Daniels steps it up one extra notch, like Jaden Daniels in year 2, you're going to get a lot of Washington in prime time next season.
Other Bills news today, before we get to Matt Perino of the Syracuse Post-Standard, we knew that this day was going to come. It officially happened today via a post on Instagram. Micah Hyde has officially announced his retirement after ending the season on the Bills practice squad. Didn't play in any games, joined the team in December. Unbelievable career, 24 interceptions, 5 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, 8 fumble recoveries. He and Jordan Poyer will always be kind of remembered as the guys that changed the defensive culture and really the locker room culture in Buffalo, along with Sean McDermott. These were 2 of his first guys that he brought on board, and they were difference makers.
And that was Doug Whaley. Doug Whaley brought them both on, and then right. So it's funny how Poyer and Hyde were Doug Whaley guys, but it aligned that way, like that it fit the McDermott defense.
Do you think it was McDermott telling Whaley, get me guys that nobody's heard of? I mean, we heard of Micah Hyde. He had a nice 4 years in Green Bay, and we were kind of scratching our heads going like, well, why is Green Bay moving off of him?
They didn't offer. Yeah, he was an unrestricted free agent, 5th rounder, and okay, we're going to let you walk. That's kind of very Green Bay, though. Like, they should have, got him. And Poyer was just kind of
He was a guy.
A
scrap heap guy.
Yeah.
But, apparently guys that fit with Sean McDermott really well, fit with this defense really well, and both made an impact in their time together with the team. I said this to Gino, and I've been saying this as long as he's been off the field this year. I think he's going to be a coach. I think Micah Hyde ends up on the sideline for the Buffalo Bills in some fashion, coaching DBs. I I feel like they're almost grooming him for it. It feels like he's that ingrained.
So why didn't
with the
he
team.
retire this time last year and just get the paperwork in?
I think this is the Bills kind of. I think the practice squad was like a rehearsal. Like, okay, can you work with Cole Bishop? What can you do with the secondary? Can you be that mentor that we expect? Because let's face it, a lot of players will say, "I want to be a GM" or "I want to be a coach," and it's one thing to say it; it's another thing to do it.
Well, it's he didn't do it though last year. He wasn't here in the spring. He wasn't at Fisher. He wasn't here all those weeks. The Bills could have brought him back at any point. So I'm going to push back. I'm thinking the Bills, he wanted to come back to Buffalo. The Bills recognized that, how would they say it politely? That, there's really no spot for you here, but we'll keep the lines of communication open. I'm not betting you on this
I was
one.
just going to ask you if you wanted to make a friendly wager on this one. Maybe Matt Perino can weigh in and share his thoughts on this.
I don't know where Matt would come down on this, but I do know that I like being happily married, and I can't.
I'm kind of thirsty. I mean, the box of wine that I won for the Belichick bet is dwindling down. There's not a lot left.
You know he's going to come back to the NFL next year, and you'll be like, "Sorry, that wasn't the bet. Sorry, Gene."
No, I'm not. I'd be specific. I'd say come back to the NFL, be a coach on the bill for the Bills. Like, I think that if they wanted to, they could make that announcement now. And if they don't make it now, they can make it next year. But I think they know what they have in him as a person. They know what they have in him as a mentor.
Yeah, but again, he didn't do that. He came back this year just kind of on the hopes that maybe they would activate him. Well, you know what? We'll let Matt be the jury.
Yeah,
here.
he can be our tiebreaker.
Yeah.
We can break ties with Matt Perino. He covers the Buffalo Bills for the Syracuse Post Standard, certainly closer to Micah Hyde than either of us are, so he can give us a little insight on the retirement of Micah Hyde. Should also mention that the other bit of Bills news today, they've added another coach, former Packers defensive line coach, Jason Rabovich, is joining the Bills as assistant defensive line coach. He was with Green Bay, and he's got ties not just with the Buffalo Bills, but with Western New York. He's from Clarence. He played at SUNY Cortland, and he was here with the Rex Ryan era.
Wow.
He was here underneath Jim Schwartz when Schwartz was the DC, so he's got familiarity with the Bills.
Good for him.
Yeah, he gets back in with the organization. Marcus West, the D-line coach here for the Bills. And, of course, Bobby Bowich will return for his second season as Bills defensive coordinator. Matt Perino covering the Buffalo Bills for the Syracuse Post-Standard. Our guest next on The Fan Rochester.
You're listening to The Sports Bar with Sports Update.
Sabres hockey tonight on the Fan. Isak Rosén going up to Buffalo from the Amerks. Sabres hosting Columbus. Our coverage will begin at 7 o'clock. Rosén going in for the injured Tage Thompson. Thompson day-to-day. Next hour, we'll talk to Amerks head coach Mike Leone here in the Sports Bar. Bills safety Micah Hyde announcing his retirement today. Bills also have a new assistant line coach on the defensive side, Jason Brbovich, formerly of Green Bay. Here's Chris Brown.
Former Packers defensive line coach Jason Rebrovich is joining the Bills staff as assistant defensive line coach. He actually was here previously. He coached under Doug Marrone and Rex Ryan from 2013 to 2016 as a defensive assistant.
Matt Perino, Shout Podcast, Syracuse Post-Standard, joining us next here in the Sports Bar. NBA tonight, Knicks in Toronto, Boston playing at Cleveland. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, the Fan, Rochester.
They've raised the bar on Rochester Sports Talk. You're in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
And according to the odds makers, the favorite is the LA Chargers. So we just have to move across the street. If that happens, plus 300. Second team, the Bills at plus 400. Steelers at plus 500. Broncos, Raiders, plus 600, plus 700.
Who's going to land Cooper Kupp? What about Myles Garrett? And a Bills legend hanging it up officially today. We welcome in Matt Perino, covering the team for the Syracuse Post-Standard, fully on the mend, back in the Sports Bar. Buddy, I hope you're feeling better. Glad to have you on with us. Break a tie for us here between Gino and I, because I believe that Micah Hyde, while he retired from the NFL today, is actually going to remain a part of this organization and this community moving forward. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being some sort of defensive coach or assistant coach to start for the Buffalo Bills, like we've seen a lot of former star DBs do here in the NFL.
You know, it's a tough one because I get where you're coming from, and the fact that he had that itch that he needed to scratch to get back around the team, even though I think by most accounts he'd probably realized he was retired or close to it. I mean, when you're out of football for that long, to get it back ramped up at his age, I think was always going to be a challenge. Every time I've asked him about this over the years, he didn't see himself as a coach once he retired. He just didn't feel like he had that gene. So I don't know, maybe coming back in that role, and we'll get a chance to talk to Michael. He'll come back to town in a couple of weeks when he starts to do the PR for the softball game. Maybe we'll learn a little bit about it. But my first instinct is to say that he won't go into coaching, but I guess never say never.
Matt, glad to have you. I'd rather talk about the future here to start because I'm salivating. The idea that Myles Garrett is requesting a trade, and for the Buffalo Bills, should be investigating this. But, man, I also want to be a millionaire and go on 5-star, resort vacations and retire and do all that stuff. I mean, it comes down to, all right, yeah, you would like this, but can you actually afford it? Where do you come down on a possible Bills pursuit for Myles Garrett?
I mean, it's very complicated and nuanced. I think the one piece of it is, of course, what Brandon Beane talked about last week is true, and it will always be true. You're never one player away. You have to kind of construct this cap situation to be sustainably good over the course of Josh Allen's contract. But here's the problem, guys. We have a 5-year sample size where they've kind of gone at it at this approach. And they keep coming up short in the biggest game. Andy Reid's coming back next year, according to Brett Veach. Travis Kelce said he wants to play 3 more seasons. I don't know if he'll stay at the level that he's at right now. This team's not going away. And I think while you're in these prime years of Josh Allen, you have to find a way to equal the playing field any way that you can. And maybe the coaching catches up. Maybe in these big-time games, third-year offensive coordinator Joe Brady will be more ready for the moment in a game like this against a guy like Steve Spagnuolo, who's been, spinning the wheel for, over a couple decades in the NFL. Maybe that will happen. But to me, the cleanest route to being able to beat this team is finding a difference maker on the other side of the ball. They got the guy on offense already in Josh Allen. Now they need the guy on defense. And under McDermott, they've never had that guy. And honestly, I think you can make the argument, if you go back to his Carolina days, they never had it
on that team either. They had a lot of really good players. I think Luke Kuechly's probably the closest thing, but I don't think he was affecting games the way that we've seen Chris Jones over the last 5 years wreck games for the Bills. And he did it again in a big spot. I mean, the guy, the pressure and sack production from Chris Jones this past season at his age is mind-boggling. And it doesn't look like he's to me the modern day Bruce Smith, a guy that is aging like a fine wine. He's getting better every single season. And I think a move for a Myles Garrett type, a Max Crosby type, that's the kind of elite playmaker that you just say, Cap be damned, we're going to figure this out, because they can plug holes around superstars. They've done it through the entirety of this regime. They're really good on day 2 and day 3 of the draft. The early returns on day 1 picks haven't been as strong. So, send a couple of those off, maybe a player, go out and get a big-time playmaker that you hope can change the math when it comes to these big games against the Chiefs. And then, the Ravens aren't going away. The Bengals are going to be back. Houston's going to be stronger. I mean, the AFC is going to be this, murderer's row for the next couple of years. I think you got to go get somebody that can deal with these offensive weapons.
Know that it's going to be a challenge and nuance for any team to pry Myles Garrett away from the Browns, but Brandon Beane has the inconvenience of having just said a few days ago that these are the kind of players that don't make themselves, that aren't readily available. Well, now you do have somebody who appears to be readily available. I mean, I would expect that the Bills would be in full pursuit, trying to get this done, knowing that the last big swing they took with Von Miller at this position didn't really exactly pan out the way I think they all envisioned it.
Right, and I don't necessarily ding him too hard for the Von quote-unquote miss. When you have an injury that comes into play for an older player like that, that's kind of part of it. And they were going all in, and I think if you rewind the clock to what it looked like through those first 8 games before the injury, I mean, it looked like they had found that difference maker. I mean, Von Miller was really electric in those first few games, and I even remember, when he went down, how that changed everything in the dynamic for that defense. They were just never able to get him back to the level that he was. And now sitting here, it's going to be 36 next year. So I don't know how you can go into next year and bank on Greg Rousseau taking another step. Like, sure, that might happen. But even with the step he took this past season, it didn't matter much in the biggest moment. Ed Oliver hasn't necessarily been the game changer that you need him to be. And I'm wondering if getting a guy like Crosby or Garrett, what that allows you to do then is take Ed Oliver and Greg Rousseau and slot them into 2A, 2B, instead of having to be the guy that really carries the load. Now you're talking about a defense that could be one of the strengths of your team and maybe a reason why you win some of these big games. Because I was listening before, and I agree with what you guys said about that caller earlier. Josh Allen has very rarely been the reason this Bills team has lost in the playoffs. I mean, the Bengals game is probably the one that you can use the most, but even then, it was a team issue. I mean, defensively, they didn't come out and clamp down on Joe Burrow by any stretch. So I think finding a way to make this defense one of the top units in the league, like the Chiefs have had the luxury of for the last couple of years, to me is the only way this is getting over the top.
Matt Perino, Shout Podcast, Syracuse Post-Standard, our guest here in the Sports Bar. The other name that is going to be available, the Rams kind of putting it out there that Cooper Kupp, they will entertain offers from. Matt, for various reasons, and I would say the cap being right at the top of the list there, and then kind of a hierarchy of how you want to pay guys that in terms of weapons. This one, even though somebody put out odds for this, I think it's a little far-fetched to see Cooper Kupp in Buffalo. Where do you come down on that possibility?
I mean, maybe I'm in the minority here, guys, but I'm just not interested in a 30-plus wide receiver whose separation numbers last season are worse than Mac Hollins. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sitting here and saying Cooper Kupp is cooked by any stretch of the imagination, but he's not the same player that you remember a couple of years ago when he was, in the conversation for the league MVP, winning the Triple Crown. Like, this is not the same player. Now, would he come in here and help this offense? Of course. I mean, adding a guy like this, changes the math for how defenses have to defend. But I also don't know if I want to spend that kind of draft or cap capital on an aging receiver when the offense in the biggest game of the season, for the season, averaged 30, scored 29 on the road in Kansas City. That's not the area that I think needs the overhaul. It's more on the other side of the ball, and that's where I'm using the majority of the resources and the majority of the cap dollars. If you can add them and the money makes sense, fine. I still think you got to find a way to address the defense.
What do we know about Jason Robrovich?
I don't actually know much about him. I wasn't here when he was here last time around, but what I do know is the Bills are turning every rock over trying to figure out a way to change things on their defensive line with, their young players, how they deploy their players, the schematic way that they attack offenses. This is a guy that has been a part of a Green Bay team over the last couple of years that has had some really, really good pass rushers. I mean, you think about Rashawn Gary coming into the league. A lot of people question if he was kind of a hybrid player. They didn't know if he was going to be a linebacker or strictly an edge rusher, and they've turned him into when he's healthy, one of the best pass rushers in the league. So I guess that to me is what pops off the most about this, is trying to bring in a guy that has proven chops in the league. Reminds me of the Aaron Kromer deal. Maybe puts Marcus West on a little bit of a clock. Everything's got to be the way that we want to see it, with development, with game planning, with how you work with Bobby Babich. And now we have somebody kind of waiting in the wings to maybe take on that role. Marcus West is only going into his second year as the full-time defensive line coach. I think you can make a case that his group was the most disappointing in terms of how much was spent in terms of draft and capital and what you got production-wise for the entirety of the season, then again in the big games.
Matt, we didn't get you on last week. I'm going to pick at the scab here a little bit. You were in Kansas City. Describe what is that scene like in the Bills locker room, knowing that the season had just come to an end?
I think just a lot of aimlessness, for lack of a better term. I mean, when you do something year in and year out and trying to figure out a problem, I think back to when I was a young kid and my dad was trying to put stuff together, and he'd get frustrated and throw the directions out a couple of times and then dig through the trash and pull them back out again. You're banging your head against the wall year after year with the same problem that you're trying to fix. And I know that they, Brandon talked about this last week, they don't build the roster specifically for a team. But if there's one team that you've made adjustments to try to beat, it's been this Chiefs team. And this to me felt like the year where they were the closest in terms of what they did offensively, what they potentially could do defensively against the offense for the Chiefs that just wasn't as good as previous years. And, you see at the end of the game them scoring 32 points in the way that they did it. There's just frustration, I think, across the board. Josh Allen, I think, another game where you probably put his game up against all the other quarterbacks that the Chiefs faced this offseason or this postseason, and I think they're probably going to look as good, if not better, than any of them. So that's got to be frustrating. And where do you go next, I guess, is the big question. And as these losses pile up, I was listening to Peyton Manning, who was on, I think it was with Rich Eisen, talking about how he sent a voicemail to Josh Allen. He's been in his shoes. He couldn't get over the hump against Brady early in his career, but it wasn't 4 straight losses. It was 2 before he finally did. And you start to wonder about a player's confidence level starting to press a little bit. It felt like he was pressing early in that game, didn't it? And I think part of that is the guy that's on the other sideline, not Patrick Mahomes either, Spagnuolo, who in those big moments, do you have the confidence that you can outsmart and beat that guy on that big moment on 4th down? They didn't.
Yeah, and when I look back and I think about who gets the blame and how do we want to assess the blame. And every time they've lost, it's been in disappointing fashion, and you can kind of point the finger and be like, oh, well, it's this guy's fault, or there's a scapegoat here, a scapegoat there. This time, it really feels like this is all on Sean McDermott. And I know that they kind of gave unprecedented access, and being specifically talking for 90-plus minutes last week feels to me like a tactic to beat a message into everybody's head, to let everybody know that we're going to keep going, we're going to keep going, we're going to keep going, we're not deflated by this. But I guess my question is about Sean McDermott. I know he's not going anywhere. He's done a lot of great things with this organization. It's silly to think that the Bills could do better than what they have in him right now. But ultimately, this is his failure. And if there is a lack of confidence from Josh Allen, doesn't it stem from knowing that it's not him in the postseason, that it's been his coach, it's been the defense that's kind of let the team down?
Yeah, I think that, you look at this entire run here with Allen and McDermott together, and I think McDermott wears a lot of the responsibility for why they haven't been able to get over the hump. And, I did notice, I thought, watching McDermott, and to your point, maybe there was a little bit of a PR tactic to, the deep dive and everything like that. It felt like a coach that opened up a little bit more than most years, gave you a little bit of insight, a little bit more into what he felt about everything. Whether or not that absolves him from anything, I'm not sure. To me, though, it's hard every single year to put everything together perfectly in the middle of a dynasty that's happening in Kansas City, right? Like, they had Brian Dable. They were on this great trajectory. He gets a head coaching job. You pivot to the guy that was next in line. That doesn't work out. You stay in the organization with a guy like Joe Brady, and 95% of it has been exactly what you would have hoped to get, a guy that reimagined the offense, reshaped the identity, more so in McDermott's model, what he wants it to be. But then, of course, when he finally gets on the biggest stage against the top defense, he leaves you wanting a little bit more. But I don't know how much of that you sit back after the fact and say, well, let's discount all the good parts about this and what led to this moment, and really hammer down on the fact that a second-year offensive coordinator that isn't even 40 years old yet got outdueled by a legendary first-ballot Hall of Fame defensive mind in this league. Some of those times, and that's why I put a little bit more on Allen's plate. McDermott wears the most, and Brady wears some, and Babbage wears some. But I do put a little bit on this offense and Allen in that you did get the ball back with 3:30 left, and finding a way to make plays on that drive. That's where legends are made, right? Now, should it be expected that Josh Allen delivers them out of all messes all the time? Of course not. But, man, that would have been an iconic way to get over the hump, to go down and deliver the game-winning drive like that. But again, with 3:30 left, maybe you even go down and score a touchdown, and that still doesn't win the game. They come back and they score. There's always the what-ifs. I just think that it's a dangerous game to play. We've talked about this a million times on this show. It's a dangerous game to play to think about moving off of McDermott for a plan or a coach where it's a little bit of a roll of the dice. If you tell me right now that you could trade a couple of first-round picks and get Sean McVay in here, sign me up for that. But outside of that, I don't know if there's many coaches that I'm signing up for them to fire McDermott and bring that guy in.
Matt, when they did, the Bills hold Kansas City to the field goal at the end, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is setting this up. You have 3.5 minutes, as you mentioned, and you're not beholden to airing it out. You want to score, but not too quickly. Here's my question. I'm sure you've gotten in fact, I know you've gotten a lot of this. James Cook. How could you not have James Cook on the field? What is your theory on that? Are they just beholden to this is the rotation and this is how we've been doing things all year long? Because to me, he had the hot hand that day, and I would have loved to see what that would have looked like.
This is a coaching thing, and to be honest with you, this is where I put the most blame on Sean McDermott. Because in these moments, you have to have an understanding of the game situation more than anybody else on your staff, including your offensive coordinator, even though you're a defensive-minded head coach. On that drive, to not have arguably your best offensive weapon on the field is unforgivable. And he said, like, let's not take away from what Ty Johnson means to this team, and I'm not. I think that there's a world you live in where both of those guys are on the field at the same time. I don't think that you're really getting yourself too worked up if you have to take one of the tight ends off or one of the wide receivers off. Get those two guys out there who I think have been as instrumental in what they've done offensively over the course of the season. And I was watching on that fourth down play. James Cook was like pacing on the sideline. I asked him after the game, and he said, I wasn't in the game. What can I do about it? And I sensed a little bit of frustration. I don't want to put words in his mouth.
Yeah.
And he's a guy that if you've listened to him ever since, he did a podcast appearance, I think it was earlier this week, where I thought that was the most passion and emotion I've seen out of James Cook. Basically, what he said about watching the Super Bowl, what he said about playing with Josh Allen, all of these like little things that came out of him in that interview. I haven't seen a lot of that. And I think that they missed the mark in having a guy out there who had already made a huge play in that game to keep you in the game, to not give him a chance to help you win it. I think they're going to be regretting that all off season. This is just another thing in a long list of things that Sean McDermott has spent 8 months regretting after they've been eliminated in the game.
I would also, just to throw another log on the fire, the insistence of doing the tush push play, even though that was an effective play. Clearly, it wasn't working against the Chiefs. They had something figured out, and it wasn't getting executed on that day. But they kept going back to it.
He said it was the best play all year long, as if like that was absolving the decision not to adjust in game. Their identity all season long was making adjustments when teams took things away. Just because you do the same thing over and over again and it works doesn't mean it's going to work every time. You got to have a plan for when it doesn't work. And against that team, it's almost like you have to go into that game preparing as if some of the best things that you do aren't going to work, and what are the answers going to be?
So in terms of an offseason checklist here, we saw Ryan Vandermark sign his deal. He'll be on the 90-man roster at St. John Fisher. Is there any timeline on Alec Anderson? Because he was such a pivotal part of that offense and their ability to run the ball with James Cook. I would imagine that he's an exclusive rights free agent, if I'm not mistaken, or a restricted free agent. I'm sorry, he's not an unrestricted. He's a restricted free agent, if I'm not mistaken. You can correct me on that. But we got to get a deal done here for Anderson, do we not?
Oh, without a doubt. I don't have it in front of me. I'm Googling it as we speak. But he's a piece for this offense that I think is critical, and somebody that they viewed as he's an exclusive rights free agent. So that's going to be pretty simple. They're probably going to give him that full deal, bring him back. They view him as a starter. And so I think getting him back in the mix is going to be a priority. It's not going to be super costly. He was making barely $1 million last season. So I think you probably get him back at somewhere around 2.5 for next season on that 1-year deal. And then you're starting to think about him maybe replacing David Edwards the following year with that Edwards contract, and you start that whole process over again. But they've done a really good job of building depth. I mean, they have 2 pieces from last year's draft, and I know Bean gets some flack for missing on these top picks, and rightfully so, but they love Grable, the swing tackle, and they're really excited about Cedric Van Pran-Granger. I think they got a couple of pieces that now are in the pipeline. If you look at this thing, it's like 8-9 players deep, and they really like some of the guys that they've had in their practice squad. So I think that's one of the positions where you feel the most comfortable going into the offseason. You got your franchise tackles locked up. McGovern's back for another year. Torrance is entering year 3 of a rookie contract, and Edwards is in the final year of his deal. So you're really happy with how you got things set up on the line.
So, Matt, last one from me. Do you have your next Disney vacation planned now?
Oh, boy. You ready for this, boys?
Tell me.
T-minus 9 days.
Oh,
Whoa.
dude. I'll be down there at the same time as you are. This is awesome.
Are you going to be at Disney World?
I won't be at Disney. We are going to do a day at Orlando. So maybe you and maybe the Perinos and the Dangers can meet up at Disney Springs for a cold one.
All right. I like where your head's at. Yeah, we're heading down. This time we went with my wife's side of the family last year. This year we are going with my side of the family, but we're all staying in at the Dolphin.
Oh.
And so we're on property, 5 park days. It's going to be it's going to be a big one. It's going to be a big one, boys. And who knows? I mean, that first Tuesday, I could be on like Tron or Guardians. You never know at about 3:25 if you need a quick run through.
You'll always hold the distinction of being the only Bills beat reporter to go live on the air from Test Track here in the
Test
Sports
Track,
Bar.
that was it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fantastic, Matt. Well, enjoy your time. I don't know. I guess are we connecting next week?
I don't know. Maybe I'll reach.
We'll figure it out.
I'm here next week.
All right, Matt.
I'm here next week.
Your time is always precious and valuable, and we appreciate you sharing some of it with us here in the Sports Bar and helping us get through it every single day here as we get farther and farther away from another disappointing end of season for the Buffalo Bills. Thanks, buddy.
Well, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for always having me on. I love chopping it up with you every Tuesday, and talk to you soon.
Good
All
stuff.
right. Thanks, Matt.
Matt Perino covering the Bills for the Syracuse Post-Standard. You can also hear Matt on the Shout podcast as well. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, it's interesting how like McDermott. Well, that was our best play all season. The Tush Push.
Yeah, I mean, for a guy that preaches humble and hungry, there is an arrogance. There's a very kind of passive-aggressive arrogance that comes with Sean McDermott. He's not the guy that's going to, but there is an arrogance there. It's like, okay, yes, you're right. That was a very good play for you during the regular season, but that does not mean that it was working for you against the team that figured it out. So mad.
Oh, I know. I know. To me, the James Cook is just
falls on him as well. Not firing Smiley, not moving on from your special teams coordinator. I mean, that to me is arrogance. It's like we all saw what we saw. I mean, what does a guy have to do to lose his job when there are 9 players on the field for the last special teams play
9 times
of the game? I don't understand that. That's an unforgivable sin.
Yeah, and telling your returner, hey, you have to return this. Oh, you're just going to let it go for a touchback on nothing on the clock. Yeah, that's fantastic.
It's a loyalty that should not be rewarded. Anyways, we'll try and turn the page here. Something more uplifting. How about Amherst hockey? Michael Leone, the head coach of the Rochester Americans, will be joining us here in the 4 o'clock hour. Looking forward to that conversation. Before we get to a break here, let's go with caller 5. We've got a free pair of tickets to see Luke Bryan at Darien Lake on August 30th. You know what kind of a party that's going to be. Caller 5 right now at 866-4FAN, 585-866-4326. You can get your tickets at livenation.com. You can get them for free if you're caller 5 right now in the Sports Bar.
You're listening to the Sports Bar. Fan Rochester, weekday mornings via the Odyssey app, and make getting out of bed your favorite part of the day. WROC AM, WBEE HD2, and W239BF Rochester. The sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan Rochester, an Odyssey sports station. The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Sabres are going to roll out a line tonight that we're certainly familiar with here in Rochester. Isak Rosane, along with J.J. Peterka and Yuri Kulik. Tage Thompson not available tonight as the Sabres take on Columbus. Our coverage here on the Fan Rochester will begin at 7 o'clock. We'll talk to Amerks head coach Mike Leone coming up later this hour here in the Sports Bar. Micah Hyde, Bill's safety, announcing his retirement today. Steve Tasker looking ahead to this offseason.
When you go out and try and get a difference maker, it's not about what you have to give up to get Cooper Kupp. It's about what you have to pay him and how long you can get him and how good he's going to be when you do get it. Myles Garrett, you know he's going to be vastly productive when he gets to wherever he's going, but can you fit him under your cap? And what sacrifices do you have to make to do that?
New assistant line coach on the defensive side is Jason Brebovich. Gene Battaglia, the Fan Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
There's not a lot of Chris Joneses floating out there, but where do you land that?
Cleveland.
I don't know many teams are going to hand you a game wrecker. They're probably sewed up. Not to say you can never get those guys. Would I love to add one of those guys? Heck yeah, I would.
Myles Garrett.
He'll have a direct ticket from Cleveland to Canton, and retire Brown.
Mike Danger.
If you're Brandon Beane, and this is a possibility, go get the guy that everybody knows would be a difference maker for this team. Go get him. Go all in now. This is a guy you want to add to your team.
Gene Battaglia.
You got to take a swing here. Who can you get as a difference maker to get by that team in the Midwest? This has to be. This is it.
Cooper Kupp says the Rams have told him they'll trade him this offseason.
We'll break down the Super Bowl.
When is kickoff? Super Bowl media night last night.
I had such a great time on with the guys in Rochester.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Oh, yeah, that was Bill Ryder than you today, earlier on the
Bill
Fan.
Ryder, yeah. Those guys in Rochester, they're well prepared. We had a fun conversation, and, I'm not talking about the Bills not making it anymore. Am I doing a good Bill Ryder here?
Yeah, this is Bill Ryder earlier. You tell me.
I was on in Rochester. I love those guys. That was such a great time. Honestly, dude, and I had a great time with the guys on Rochester. And by the way, I was doing that hit yesterday, and we talked NBA, and they did mention that they're not playing the there's a rejoin of me, a promotion of me, basically. The Bills window is closed, which if you're listening elsewhere in America, Rochester, Buffalo Bills country, those guys are great. I love that affiliate. I love that city. We're very lucky to be on there. But they would play it basically like, the writer, the national guy who's on here, Bills are looking good. Apparently they pulled it because it's not as funny now. So...
Well, I don't want to kick them when they're down.
No, I feel bad. I
do.
Dude, I love those dudes. I had such a great time with the guys in Rochester.
Now, I love Bill Ryder. I love that he said all of those nice things about us. Do you really believe that he's been to Rochester before?
Who?
Say he loves the affiliate, loves us.
You can love. He could just
loves us. He said, "I love the city."
Do you think you can love a city if you've never been to it? Like he's been on the air with us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've never been to Paris. Can you love Paris if you've nenever been there? I don't.
You don't really know, but I think
like how
I'm gonna go ahead and say that he has. I'm not gonna say he's lying when he says he loves the city. Well, he was a New York guy.
Covered the Miami Heat. So, the NBA wouldn't have brought him back to Rochester, but
why not? I heard we have a rich NBA history here. Why wouldn't he come back to Rochester?
Listen, maybe he came back for the LeBron against Chris Bosh preseason game where everybody was upset that neither of them played.
Maybe.
Wow, a preseason game where both guys didn't play. I had no idea that's the way it worked.
Possibly. Yeah, that was very nice of him to take time out of his nationally syndicated show to say good things about us. It's Danger with a D and Gene Battaglia, Gene with a G. Bill, thank you. The next time you're writing nice glowing things about our community, we appreciate that.
Yeah. Are the Dangers and Perinos really going to get together in 2 weeks there?
I'll reach out to him. I have one day we've kind of sketched out. We don't know because of the weather. We want to be able to maximize the beach days, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first and foremost goal of us going down there. I love hearing and living vicariously through families like the Perinos who get to go to Disney with their little ones every year, because I did that, and it was I wouldn't take any of those memories away for anything. It was so much fun. And I know there are people listening like, ugh, Disney, get out of here with Disney. I'm sorry. I don't know. You might think that, you can't spell danger without ANGER, but something happens to me when I'm in those parks, Gino. I don't know what it is. I can't explain it other than I watch it through my kids' eyes, through that filter, and it just fills me with joy.
No, when breaking down we have to have a nuanced conversation. Because, honestly, you turn into a big softy when talking about your girls, which, as a loving dad, that's a credit to you.
Uh-huh.
First time I go down to Disney, staying at the All-Star Sports, right?
Uh-huh.
And, kids are still pretty young at that point. I mean, they're grade school, like fifth, third grade.
They're the right age.
Yeah, they're right age. And they go to bed before I'm ready to go to bed. And the executive producer's tired from a day in the sun. Like, what am I going to do? Oh, I got an idea. I'll go down to, the bar area. It is the land of sad dads after hours. Like, oh, okay, just a bunch of guys not knowing, the game is on? Okay, that was...
But you had a good time.
Had a good time. So, you and Perino, it's not sad dad time because your daughter is going with you. She's going to be old enough, right?
Yeah, my daughter will tag along with whatever. And there's another friend I have in Orlando who I might reach out to while I'm there.
Wait, are you going to reach out to our guy who no longer comes on the show? He lives more on the Gulf Coast there.
Well, I'm going to be spending the majority of my time on the Gulf Coast. Who's the guy that doesn't come on our show anymore? Luke from Rochester?
No, he used to work with us.
Oh, God.
How'd you forget
horrible.
that?
Sorry. No.
No.
I forgot about that. Masterstroke.
Where's he? Bradenton, I think, somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm too far out of the way. Look, I'm not going to say no to that. I'm not going to say no to reaching out to Masterstroke. I don't know what our nights are going to look like.
Dude, I haven't seen Masterstroke since 2019.
It's my 15-year-old daughter and I. I'm sure she won't mind if Dad lugs her around like a luggage to all of the.
We're going
to hang out with the people I want to hang out with. We're going to hang out with Masterstroke and Matt Perino and my buddy JJ, and we're all going to go hang out. And you're just tagging along. You're my 15-year-old, accessory. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Shame on me. Bradenton, I think, is somewhere near where I'm staying. I'm Sarasota, so I'm probably not that far.
I know my Florida geography based on spring training.
I think you know your Florida geography better than I do, which is why I need to spend more time down there so I can actually get more familiar with my Florida geography.
You're someday going to be the old guy, like, okay, welcome to the sports bar.
Just get ready to see
I'm,
my face on Zoom more than you're going to see my face in person. Just get ready for that day. Prepare yourself for that now, because that's coming. That's happening. I was talking to a coworker today who lives in Buffalo. She works in our Buffalo cluster of stations, and she's doing it. I'm like, how long are you going? She's like, 8 weeks. I'm going down for 8 weeks down to Florida. She's like, I pack all my equipment. I pack all my stuff. I just do my job from down there. I'm like, yeah, kind of do the job from anywhere. If technology is afforded us anything, it's that flexibility to kind of be able to broadcast from wherever you happen to have your feet. So not this year, not next year. We got a couple more years. Lexi's still in high school.
You got a few years, but
yeah.
I'm not.
That'll be fun. And will I get with the Perinos? We'll see. Yeah. I know there's a day at Disney Springs in my future. That I know. I'm not doing the parks because we're kind of over it. Like, she's 15 now.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all love going to the parks, but, we're not going to get the same bang for the buck that we would get when they were little, right? When they're 8, 9, 10, and it truly is magical. That ain't happening. But to go to Disney Springs for a day and kind of get a little bit of that and do some shopping, which is what she wants to do. And if I have the opportunity to get together with some buddies and pour a couple of cold ones, I'll take that all day.
Have no fear, gentle sports bar listener, because I'm not going anywhere. So it'll be me and Terrible Take Timmy and the Dandalorian and all your friends here. When
You enjoy your President's Week. Yeah. I will enjoy some sunshine.
I'm going to enjoy the fruits of Rochester, New York that week. Hey, there are 2 professional major league teams in Western New York.
Since when?
Yeah. Are we reading anything into this? Kevin Weeks, NHL.com, does a lot of things. He's a little quirky on social media and think that's his shtick, right? Quite often, he'll tease a story before he drops it. And today, only if you know Buffalo, you would know exactly where this is. He showed a picture of Chippewa. Okay, does this mean that there's a Sabre story that's going to drop? What possibly could get Sabre fans excited right now? What could possibly pull you back in or get us talking more about it? What, trading for Connor McGovern? Terry Pegula selling the team? Look, Danger, anything short of that.
Connor McGovern.
Connor McGovern.
McDavid?
Connor McDavid. It's right in front of me. Yeah, that would be a story, right? Bill Center, Connor McGovern.
Well, I can tell you what.
Sabres.
If Connor McGovern laced him up, he would go after the a-hole that knocked out your best player. I can tell you that.
Here are the Sabres that I'm done with, okay? Because on the ice, I can't say Kulik, okay? He's a kid. That's not his job. What about Zucker? What about Samuelson? What about Owen Power? What, you guys are just standing around there. Dude.
I don't like Zucker standing around, but I like Zucker's game this year. He's been good this year. Power and Samuelson, inexcusable, just completely inexcusable. And, if I'm guessing, if Weeksy's being cryptic here and there's something in the works, if you're going to get any sort of player of significance to come here, you're going to have to give up one of these former first number 1 overall picks. It's like an Owen Power kind of guy.
Bye. Do you have this?
Will that move the needle, though?
Yeah.
Depending on who that somebody like that is.
There's also another update here today. Now, this was following, if you're not following this whole story, Tage Thompson got run, essentially. The Devil player that got a match penalty. And then the Sabres didn't respond. Yes, they won the game, but come on, what are we doing? And our friend Lance Lysowski of the Buffalo News had the exact question you need to ask Lindy Ruff. This was post-game.
Yeah, I don't have it, but
I'm sorry.
The audio is basically Ruff was getting challenged about how that looked, and his reaction to the question was anger.
BS.
It was BS.
BS. Next question. Well, if it was BS, then why was there a team meeting today talking about the lack of response?
It needs to change. And if you're having a team meeting at this stage of the season to talk about what should be an instinct, this is not I've been saying it. It's an unserious franchise. You say that there's 2 professional sports teams in Buffalo. And I said, since when? Because what I saw this weekend, that is not a that is an unserious NHL team. Instinctually, you go after that guy. But they didn't do that. They didn't, and Lindy can be as mad as he wants. It's an indictment on him. Maybe Lindy has lost something off the fastball, as we kind of wondered and suspected when they took the easy path and hired the guy that they're familiar with. I'm done. I don't know what to ask to answer your question. How do you move the needle? I don't know if there's anything this season that can move the needle for me. I love Seth. I think Seth is great. I think Seth Appert is awesome.
I'm afraid Seth Appert's going to be collateral damage.
I love Seth Appert. I love the idea that tonight you can watch 3 guys that cut their teeth here in Rochester, 3 of Seth's guys on the top line. I think that's exciting. But I'm talking a big game here. Of course I'm going to tune in. I want to see what it looks like. But am I going to get excited? Do I have some sort of renewed optimism for this team? Absolutely not. Not after what they showed us the other night. That was, the entire league is pointing and laughing at you. The entire league. Anybody that watches hockey is pointing and laughing at you. You're a laughing stock, and you've been there for 20 years, and I don't know what changes that at this point.
As far as malaprops, that's one of the worst all time on the show.
Oh, Connor McGovern.
Connor McGovern. Yeah, trade for Connor McGovern.
Well,
That's
if Connor
a great
McGovern
idea.
is out there, I'm telling you, he would actually throw down. I think he would throw down. I love this take earlier today from Pro Football Talk, and it's a name that can be divisive, but I thought when the coaching cycle opened up that he would get some opportunities. Turns out he didn't, and I'm talking about John Gruden. He's at Barstool now. He didn't get a sniff as a head coach this cycle, but, and PFT puts this out, what about as an offensive coordinator? Now, I know that the legal stuff is there, and if this almost makes too much sense, so if it doesn't happen, you have to kind of start to wonder, is he being blackballed by the NFL and by the NFL owners? And my guess is he probably is. New Orleans. Gruden is an offensive coordinator. Kellen Moore, first-time head coach. Gruden has experience as a head coach, along with a history with Derek Carr. Maybe you unlock more out of the team's investment in Carr. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but like a lot of things, it's like it makes almost too much sense for it to not even be considered.
Well, couple things here. One, let's just kind of acknowledge that the world has changed here in the last month, so maybe. But even though Roger Goodell, doubled down and said, which he should, he just like, hey, we've got programs in place. He was asked about that. It is.
I don't know if you heard, Gene. We solved all the problems. The end racism is coming out from the end back of the end zone, so we're good.
That's good.
The NFL is moving on from that.
It's not a fit at all. Like, Kellen Moore needs to run the Kellen Moore offense. He doesn't need to run John Gruden's offense. Like, John Gruden's offense, like, these two didn't work together. I would have listened, actually, like, to John Gruden going back to the Raiders. The Raiders paying Chip Kelly. You know, Chip Kelly's the highest paid offensive coordinator in the league now. It's true. That's what they pay. Like, the Raiders did this? I thought the Raiders were poor on that. No, Kellen Moore needs to put his system in there. He doesn't need John Gruden kind of leaning over his shoulder there. But as far as a pathway there, I mean, are all the coordinator spots filled up at this point?
I just think that the longer the Saints wait, they're picking the bottom of the barrel.
Did Tampa hire a replacement for
I
Colin?
want to say that they did, and I can't remember if it was an internal promotion. I think it was. an internal promotion.
Well, step one before anybody gets to this, and this is PFT putting this out for clicks. Step one is, hey, drop the lawsuit, quid pro quo. Stop working for Barstool.
Yeah.
Okay, Barstool still is selling Roger Goodell clown noses.
Yeah, not a fan of. I'm sure Barstool and Goodell don't see eye to eye on many things.
There's a place in this world for Barstool.
Sure.
However, if you're the NFL, you're like, really? No, I don't think so. So I would also say this, too. There was a pathway, I think, for Colin Kaepernick to come back, but he didn't want to do the necessary steps. Isn't that the same true thing with Gruden?
I would listen to that.
Yeah, do the necessary things. First of all, drop the lawsuit.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Mike Leone is the Amerks head coach, and he's good with this time to join us every Tuesday, talk about his club, his squad. I get a little fired up and passionate about the Sabres. I'm curious as to what Leone's take was on the lack of response from the Sabres, and we'll spend more time talking about the Amerks, I promise. But you do have Isaac Rosane going back up and playing on the first line tonight against Columbus, so we'll talk about everything going on with the Amerks here as they take care of Syracuse in back-to-back nights, and we look ahead to Friday night, the next time that they're on ice here, coming out of the AHL All-Star break. Mike Leone next on The Fan.
Sports Update.
Tonight's Sabre game certainly going to have an Amherst flavor. Isak Rosane going up to the big club as he'll center the line with J.J. Peterka and Yuri Kulik. Tage Thompson not available tonight. Coming up next in the Sports Bar, we'll talk to Amherst head coach Mike Leone. Sabres in Columbus. Our coverage will begin at 7 here on the Sports Leader. From the Bills side of things, Micah Hyde today announcing his retirement. The Bills also hiring a new assistant line coach on the defensive side in Jason Rebrovich. Here's Chris Brown.
Former Packers defensive line coach Jason Rebrovich is joining the Bills staff as assistant defensive line coach. He actually was here previously. He coached under Doug Marrone and Rex Ryan from 2013 to 2016 as a defensive assistant.
Meanwhile, Chiefs head coach Andy Reid telling reporters today he's going to be back next season. Gene Battaglia, the Sports Leader, the Fan, Rochester.
Neat or on the rocks? It's the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Our Amerks are hot. Winners of 4 straight heading into the AHL All-Star break. Always excited to talk to Amerks head coach Mike Leone, who joins us every week at this time. Coach, another fun weekend of Amerks hockey ahead. We saw the team handle their home-and-home against Syracuse on Saturday and on Friday night, back at Blue Cross Arena last Friday night. Before we talk about your team, because I feel like we're having a general hockey conversation, and I know a lot has been said, and I just want to get your thoughts on what you saw from Sunday, the hit on Thompson, and to a lot of people's eyes, the lack of response, especially given what we just saw out of your squad in Hartford just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I actually it was I didn't quite see the play. I was actually driving back home. I know there was a lot of talk about it. It's a tough situation for sure. We kind of have a different. Wasn't one of our top guys, but Sandy got hit earlier in the year, and I think it was at a home game where he got kind of ran, and I think a lot of guys didn't know what happened, but it was kind of a situation where I thought we could have handled it a little better. It was earlier in the season, and I think it's just one of those things internally. You talk about it as a group, and it's a fast game. You never know. I actually still haven't seen the play, so I can't speak on it. But you always want your team to respond, and I think they're learning experiences for the group, and just you gotta. I think there's a moment of togetherness that you got to have as a group, and those situations, like you said, in our game, and it goes a long way. It's not surprising that we've been kind of on a little run after that game.
Well, Mike, and I'll just say generally speaking, because you're in a spot where really we don't want to be. You don't want to be saying anything. Your boss is up in Buffalo, but if I just go back to the Hartford game, it wasn't like you needed to say anything to your guys. You knew what the story was going in. Some guy fires the puck after the whistle, which you never ever should do, and then it's on. Those. Like, for a coach, you don't need to say, hey, we need to take care of this and that. Like, it should already be understood, right? That whether
I think so. And I think it's just situations where it's hard to explain as a team. Like, I think you really, and I'm not talking about the situation it's just a moment of the game where I think the guys know you really care about each other, guys. In the room you're together every day, you're going out to eat, you're on the road, and there's just there's a camaraderie, and if something happens to one of your brothers, I hope someone's there to protect him, and then there's things that you talk about as a team. I'm not saying we have a bunch of heavyweights, but I think there's a way you could play with a level of physicality and toughness that goes a long way, and I think it was a huge
moment for our team that game. Like I said before, just going to the room after the second period, there was no doubt in my mind we were going to win the game. It just you could see it after, and then the bus ride home, and it's carried over the last 3 games after that.
Rosie gets the call up, and we'll see him in the lineup tonight against Columbus. You talk about that move and how you had to deliver that message to him here while he was about to get recognized for being an AHL All-Star.
Yeah, no, I called him this morning earlier in California time, so it was probably maybe 7:45, 8 o'clock, and I didn't want to cut his All-Star break short, but great opportunity for him. He's really taken his game to another level the last couple of weeks. He's huge part of our team. His line with Murr and Noah Osland have been incredible. They're playing like a first line, and awesome opportunity for him. It looks like he's going to play up in the lineup tonight and probably get some power play time, and it's a well-earned call-up. And, anytime you want to see kids get the most out of their opportunities, I think he's going to play with Yuri tonight, it looks like. I saw a couple projected lineups, so awesome for him, and really excited to watch him play tonight.
Yeah, I'm just curious if they've given you any idea, because you do have that break coming up in the NHL that, do they keep Friday night, Amherst home against Belleville. Any chance he would come back for that one specifically, Coach?
You know what? I honestly have no idea. For him, I hope he plays well and then warrants another game, to be honest with you. I think he's playing really good, and that's a part of playing in our league. There's been times where you really have no idea who's we're getting close to a full lineup, but that's part of our league, and why we do what we do is hopefully guys play well enough to get called up, whether it's an injury, and I'm really excited for him. I'm not sure about Friday night.
Rochester coming off their weekend against Syracuse. They beat the Crunch 4-1 at Blue Cross Arena on Friday night, then go to Syracuse on Saturday and win 4-3 in overtime. This was your first weekend, Coach, with a Stanley Cup winner on your roster. Talk about the contributions of Nick Abe-Kubel in his first weekend with the team. Yeah,
it was great. I had a great talk with him the first day he came down. I just told him I respect him a lot as a player, and there's a lot of emotion that goes into it. He's played in the NHL. I think he just played his 300th game. He's been on a lot of winning teams. You look at some of the coaches he's played for, the Peter Laviolette. He was in Washington last year, got to play in the playoffs, won a Stanley Cup with Colorado, and he had a great attitude. I think it probably took him some time. I think he maybe played 20 minutes the last month combined, and he played around 15 minutes the first night. So there's a little bit of that too, just getting up to speed with his conditioning and being able to play minutes. But I thought he did a great job. He was all in. He was bought into the way we wanted to play, and had a really nice game for us on Wednesday, and carried it over to the weekend. But he was great. His attitude was great, and I give him a lot of credit for coming down and being where your feet are, and helping the team win with his contributions.
Yeah, you get the extra point on Saturday night, winning in overtime against Syracuse. I'm not sure if it doesn't get to that point, Coach, if it's not for the play of Felix Sandstrom. 21 saves in the third period, and now he's won 6 in a row. I mean, gosh, so for some guys, particularly goaltenders, maybe it's just kind of like they start to feel it as they get kind of along in their career. He's 28. What has Sandstrom meant for your team this season?
Yeah, he's been, I can't say enough about him. He probably didn't start the season how he wanted to start, but he's done a really good job. I think in practice is, the speed of what we practice, and I think it's really helped him in the game. And when his number's called, he's done a great job. And I look at that game in Syracuse. I think everybody knows I think it's the hardest place to play in the league with it's regulation size rink, but it feels like you're playing in someone's backyard with how big their players are. And, I thought we played 5 really good periods, and I thought we did it. They pushed big time. No one wants to get swept on the weekend, and I thought we did a good job limiting, shots from the interior. But I think they had 3 power plays in the third period, and that's where Sandy had to be really good, and the guys stuck with it, and made a big play with the goalie pulled. We've had a couple of those the last 3 weekends, and then Rosie made a play in overtime, but we don't get there without Sandy. He's done a great job, and as a coach, any time, whether it's Dev or Sandy in the net, they give us a chance to win, and you're not going to be success. I think you need 2 goalies in any league, whether it's NHL, AHL, or East Coast Hockey League. There's just so many games in so little time, so you need both guys to be sharp, and Sandy's done a fantastic job.
Mike, you've mentioned the momentum that the team has coming off of the win in Hartford and everything that went on with that game. You've got a 4-game win streak that now goes into the All-Star break, and I'm wondering if that momentum carries here when you're facing a team in Belleville on Friday that you haven't seen in about a month and a half. It's been a while since the Sens have faced off against the Amerks. Being at home, I'm sure, helps out a lot. How do you carry that momentum here coming out of the break?
Yeah, I think it's just, we gave the game. We'll practice on Thursday. I think everyone in the league is utilizing this time, whether it's injury, I know there's a lot of sickness going around, and just have a really good day, practice on Thursday, and then be ready to go. And, they just got Marilainen just got sent down. He was 8-1 in the NHL, but had to be sent down because the roster, Ottawa's really, playing really good. I think they're in 3rd place in the division, and Marilainen was a huge part of that. Now they got him down, and if you look at his numbers in the AHL, I think he was 8-2 this year. And so we'll have our hands full. They've been unfortunate with a lot of injuries and call-ups with Ottawa, but when you have a goalie like that, it's just making sure we're playing our game, we respect our opponent, and just make sure there's probably a little bit of just playing smart, especially early, not trying to cheat for offense, and just play a really simple game, and then get everyone involved, and hopefully we'll just keep playing really good hockey.
Mike, going back to in full circle, last one for me. Your days as a player, were you ever in a situation where, okay, the right thing is I have to go after this guy, maybe that means I get my nose broken or whatever it is? What is that like, knowing that you've been through situations, I'm sure, like that?
Yeah. No, I played for a guy named John Cooper, and I didn't have a choice. So we in junior hockey, there's been multiple occasions. There's probably a little bit more dirtier back then when we were down in the game, and we didn't lose very many, but we knew whether it was a bump on the goalie or he was a bit old school in that sense. So I wouldn't say I was a fighter, but I definitely, whether it was pro or junior hockey, had my fair share, and that was kind of, I was probably a glue energy guy. So yeah, there was times, and definitely playing for him. I think everybody had the green light, and you knew what you had to do if something like that happened.
When it comes to assessing that kind of justice, Mike, your instincts kind of take over as a hockey player, don't they?
Yeah. I think it's, everybody's different. I think sometimes certain guys wires cross or you see red, but I think at the end of the day, it's just about sticking up for your teammates, and it's a brotherhood inside the room, and you get fired up, and you want to. It's kind of, I wouldn't say lost in the game, but I still think it's a very important piece in the game. I listen a lot about Razor. His career, and what a night that was for him to get introduced, and even him in his speech, he never talked about himself one time. It was all about his teammates and, helping them, and what Lindy said about him and what he meant to the group. And I think it goes a long way, as you don't have to be I look at, Ty Tullio or Slags, they probably fought maybe 3 times in their whole life, but they were there to answer the bell because they're for their teammates. And I think it goes a long way with the group.
Mike, I really thought we would have been, meeting up with you in New Orleans at one point, in December this week, and this is the weekend, yeah.
Yeah, it's too bad. I know.
Well, Mike, best of luck Friday. Enjoy the rest of the break, and we'll catch up with you again next Tuesday. Appreciate it, bud.
Okay, you guys have a good one.
Thanks, Mike.
There's Mike Leone, Rochester Americans head coach, Lions fan. We won't hold it against him.
He's from Detroit.
Yeah, he's from Detroit.
Like you're allowed to root for your hometown team, no doubt about it. But he's one of us, and I think the way his team went after Hartford, and then they weren't concerned about the W. That game was a tie game.
They went into the locker room after that brawl,
and then
they knew they were going to win that game.
They knew they were going to win that
That's
game.
Right.
And Roseanne ends up with a hat trick, too, in that. And yet, Lindy Ruff there on Sunday talking about, well, we needed to get the 2 points. Oh.
Yeah, I know Mike isn't going to tell us.
He can't.
He can't.
He can't.
He can't be critical. The instincts is the part that worries me, because to hear him, and anybody that's played the sport knows, instincts take over. And maybe it's not in your DNA or it's not in your makeup to go after somebody or to drop gloves and exact justice. But it sure seems like that's what most of the Sabres roster is made of. Because this isn't the first time. This has happened last season as well. I want to say Dahlin got crunched and nobody came to his defense again. So this is a recurring theme with this team. And now you're talking about two different coaches. It's not the coaches as much as it is the guys. It's their makeup. It's their lack of instinct.
Well, let's just start with the two guys that were on the ice, the two defensemen. Who had a clear view of that?
And are big.
Yeah,
big
Power
guys.
and Samuelson. Is it danger that the time these kids are growing up, let's take Owen Power, who's playing college hockey, where you don't fight in college hockey, and he didn't come to the Rochester Americans. That's a part of the game that did they miss out here on what this
then if for a team that talks so much about development, you did them a disservice. You did them a disservice. And I know, you're taking number 1 overall. You're not going to play in the AHL. Okay, well then you need to develop them at the pro level and let them know these are moments where your instincts need to take over. You need to go after the guy that just took down your brother. It makes zero sense to me. It's maddening. I'm excited to see what Roseanne looks like tonight on the top line. And we'll see how the Sabres fare against the Blue Jackets, going for their 4th win in a row. But like I said, and we said yesterday, even when they win, sometimes it feels like a loss. And that's certainly how I felt Sunday after they beat the Devils.
There are, and if you're one of them, I will hear this. You know what? I'd rather watch tonight Celtics and Cavs, or the Knicks seeing on the back-to-back if Tibbs will play everybody up in Toronto or whatever it is. So I hear you.
Oh, there's always options, of course. And I know there's some people that, just like there's some people that aren't NBA guys, there's some people that are not NHL guys. That's fine. Totally cool. But we have the Amerks. The Amerks are ours. They're in our backyard. We love talking to Mike Leone every Tuesday. Friday, they hit the ice again. Belleville comes into town at Blue Cross Arena. We encourage y'all to stop out to Blue Cross Arena. Your team is hot right now. We got 4 straight wins for the Rochester Americans coming out of the All-Star break, and they'll look to make it 5 against Belleville come Friday night.
Our number is 866-4FAN, 866-4326. Aaron calling from Rochester. What's up, Aaron?
I feel like I keep calling you guys, but you keep talking about topics I want to talk about.
Oh, then I guess we're hitting the mark. Nice.
Yeah. The Sabres thing, this is a culture thing. This has been happening for years.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Eichel. Look at how he was while he was on the ice. He didn't even want to be there. It's a culture thing in Buffalo, and something's got to give. And hiring Lindy was a huge mistake because he just failed in New Jersey with a young team.
Yeah, I'll put my hand up in the air. I thought, and Aaron, thank you for the call, and appreciate it. And you call anytime. I was all in favor of this. This isn't working. This should be a one and done.
Yeah, it felt like a path of least resistance move from me from the get-go.
You can't bring back Lindy Ruff with this young roster. You're in dead last of the conference. Teams are like, Why? What? If only Boston's not in a playoff spot. The Rangers aren't in a playoff spot. Tampa Bay is not in a playoff spot.
Yeah, this is the year where everybody's down and you're down with them.
You're down. Like Columbus,
Yeah.
They lose their star in a tragic accident. They're in a playoff spot. Detroit.
The Sens.
The freaking Sens.
Yes. The only thing that I can think of that would get me remotely excited about the future, and I know you mentioned it earlier that you feel like if there's a change, if there's sweeping change, that he would be collateral damage. If Seth Appert were given the chance to be the head coach, work with a lot of these guys that he came up with in Rochester, guys that he has memories with, shared experiences with as they were grinding and doing what they were doing and building a winning culture here in Rochester. And let's not mistake the two franchises. They're part of the same organization, but one has a winning culture and one can't get out of their own way. That feels like maybe I know it's not sexy. I know it might make a lot of people go, well, he's never been a coach before. Hey, being on that bench next to a legend like Lindy Ruff for a season could probably do wonders for a guy like Seth Appert.
Oh, like it's going to get worse? Ooh.
Right.
Ooh.
Right.
What are we doing?
That's right. So that I would welcome. Actually would love to see that. I don't know that that's going to happen. I might be dreaming a little bit on that one. And with Lindy, look, man, I mean, I think the intentions are there. I think you say all the right things. You go grab a guy. You go grab another guy. If you don't know who did it, you go. You just go. What he's saying there, what our caller was saying, I'm sorry, I forgot who just called us.
Aaron.
Aaron.
Yeah.
Aaron, I'm sorry, Aaron. Aaron makes a great point. It is a culture thing. Do you remember there was one game where Eichel threw down just because? Yeah. You could just tell, like, he went and picked on, like, the smallest guy in the opposing team. I can't remember who it was, but Eichel got in a fight just because it felt like somebody had to do something, and it was awkward and clumsy, and it was just like fighting just for the sake of fighting. That's not what it's about. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about get after the guy that just did your brother dirty and stick up for him. Your instinct should take over. These guys are playing without soul. They're an unserious franchise.
They're all robotic. You notice how when I was mentioning the NBA games, I did not mention Lakers-Clippers tonight, unless you want to watch sitting, I'm sure, courtside Luka tonight for the Lakers.
Luka getting introduced. We heard from AD for the first time as a Dallas Maverick today. I'll hold on to and reserve judgment on the trade. The winner of the trade wins a championship. And it might not happen this year. I don't think it's going to happen this year. But long term, short term, whatever it is, if the Lakers win a championship, congrats, you won the trade. If the Mavs win the championship, somehow get farther than the Lakers, then I would say, all right, good for the Mavs.
Well, kind of to paraphrase Brandon Beane, like you can't go get a Chris Jones. Like you need the star to build around. The Lakers just snared themselves one. Now, are they patient enough to build around Luka? But it's not going to work this year with the Lakers. And the Western Conference is not going to work with Dallas either. So at the end of the day, what are we doing? Dallas tonight in Philadelphia.
We will get to happy hour next on The Fan, Rochester. We appreciate you stopping by. You can join us at 866-4326. We'll have plenty of time for your calls next hour at 585-866-4FAN if you want to pull up a stool. And speaking of trades, another star player has been told that he's going to be, they're going to shop him around, and that's Cooper Kupp in Los Angeles. So Cooper Kupp, Myles Garrett. Oh, by the way, a Super Bowl coming up on Sunday. Media Day going on. Lots happening around the NFL. The Bills making a couple moves, and a legend retires from Buffalo as well. That's all coming up, along with a round of shots and your calls at 866-4326.
Sleepy tunes into electrifying sports action. WROC-AM, WBEE HD2 Rochester, and streaming online and in the Odyssey app at The Fan Rochester, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan Rochester, an Odyssey sports station. The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Sabres hockey here tonight on The Fan. Isak Rosén is going to be on the top line for Buffalo tonight. This is because Tage Thompson remains out. He's day-to-day. Sabres Columbus, our coverage will begin at 7. That's a career for Micah Hyde today, officially announcing his retirement. The Bills also naming a new assistant defensive line coach, Jason Rebrovich, second stint in Buffalo. He's a SUNY Cortland grad. Steve Tasker today talking about Cooper Kupp, the possibility this offseason.
When you go out and try and get a difference maker, it's not about what you have to give up to get Cooper Kupp. It's about what you have to pay him and how long you can get him and how good he's going to be when you do get it. Myles Garrett, you know he's going to be vastly productive when he gets to wherever he's going, but can you fit him under your cap? And what sacrifices do you have to make to do that?
NBA tonight, the Knicks in Toronto. Gene Battaglia, The Fan Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
There's not a lot of Chris Joneses floating out there, but where do you land that?
Cleveland.
Cleveland? I don't know many teams are going to hand you a game wrecker. They're probably sewed up. Not to say you can never get those guys. Would I love to add one of those guys? Heck yeah, I would.
Myles Garrett.
He'll have a a direct ticket from Cleveland to Canton, and retire Brown.
Mike Danger.
If you're Brandon Beane, and this is a possibility, go get the guy that everybody knows would be a difference maker for this team. Go get him. Go all in now. This is a guy you want to add to your team.
Gene Battaglia.
You got to take a swing here. Who can you get as a difference maker to get by that team in the Midwest? This has to be. This is it.
Cooper Kupp says the Rams have told him they'll trade him this offseason.
We'll break down the Super Bowl.
When is kickoff?
Super Bowl media night last night.
I had such a great time on with the guys in Rochester.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan. Rochester.
You know, another guy that'll go straight from Cleveland to Canton joins us tomorrow at 4:25. That's 585 native Spencer German from our Odyssey Sports sister station 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland. We'll discuss with Spencer tomorrow afternoon just how realistic a trade of Myles Garrett is. We have the GM saying the things that a GM is supposed to say, that there's nothing that's going to happen with Myles Garrett in Cleveland.
My anticipation and expectation is that he'll have a direct ticket from Cleveland to Canton at the end of this year, and expect him to be here, and retire Brown, quite frankly.
I wonder about Andrew Barry, and we can talk about this with Spencer tomorrow. I wonder, is he taking orders from the owner in a specific way? Like, did Andrew Barry really want to do the deal with Deshaun Watson? Did Kevin Stefanski really want to do everything that they did in bringing in Watson? And then simultaneously, now when you look at the Myles Garrett situation, all right, now do you have the Haslams saying, under no circumstances are we trading Myles Garrett? When the reality is, you could get a pretty decent haul for Myles Garrett.
That's an interesting angle here, Danger, because we're just all assuming, if this is not done, before free agency, this will be done draft night.
What if it doesn't?
That owner?
Yeah.
Owner be spiteful. He'd be like, nope.
Yeah.
You signed on the line that was dotted.
And what if Myles Garrett's holding out? And how could this get ugly? Could it get ugly? Yeah, that's what we're all here for.
Yeah, and it's and Browns fans are probably like, just grabbing your popcorn, let the world go to whatever. I'm just excited. It's almost like. The old Woody Woodpecker where he would look at food and like the turkey and all of a sudden he'd start to salivate. That's how I feel. I'm salivating over the idea that Myles Garrett is available for the right price.
How do you think Brandon Beane feels right now? Do you think he feels the same? I think so too. I think when you're that kind of competitor, we've spent a lot of time talking about instincts. Like, you have this instinct in you that, like, your vision, this is exactly what we need. If we get that, man, it is going to make us what we want to be. Go get them. Go get them. And deal with the ramifications later. I mean, the Rams won a Super Bowl with that attitude, right? The Rams said, we're going to be unconventional, screw draft picks. We're going to put the best team on the field that we could possibly put, and we're going to win it all. And they did.
Well, and we're joined by Matt Perino, Syracuse Post-Standard, who brings up a point. The Bills are always trying to build this, not for just this year, but also in the future. That approach the last 5 years hasn't worked. It's won you a divisional title, and probably the Bills will get a 6. Barring some injury, the Bills will win another divisional title, the AFC East. I don't think I'm jinxing it.
And to say
but like at what point you know what you need to do to get by?
To say we want to win now and win in the future, I mean, like that felt like what they said when they were rebuilding. That was the line I remember the year that they were supposedly rebuilding, which was what they were last year. Supposedly, this is a retooling year. We want to win now, but we also want to win in the future. All right, enough. Let's just focus on the win now part. Let's get one.
Look, there's only one team that's given up 30 points at Kansas City this year. It should be very, very clear. And if you're going to marry these two stories together, and hey, Cooper Kupp, we have this vision of him being a Super Bowl MVP, which he was. It wasn't Von Miller.
Triple Crown winner.
Yeah, he was fantastic. Then he got hurt. And for Matt Perino also to point out, like, hey, when you look at the stats, Matt Collins actually had better separation. I'm not going to say that Cooper Kupp is done. But you heard it in the
Are you saying that Matt Collins is better than Cooper Kupp?
Tasker kind of laid it out there.
By that
it's
metric,
like,
sure.
Like you can't. How much are you going to pay him, and what are you going to do, and everything else. The offense isn't the problem, okay? We are not the show, and I love Jeremy. We're friends, but I'm not going to be like choo-choo. Like, we need to come up with our own mantra. Defense. Let's beef up. Let's get some guys who can cover.
Cooper Kupp due to make $20 million in 2025. $12.5 in salary, $7.5 in a roster bonus. $5 million of that bonus is guaranteed fully. So it would appear that Cooper Kupp's days, with LA announcing that they're shopping him, his days of making $20 million per as a wide receiver in the NFL are about to come to a close. The Rams might have to eat some of that money for the new team if they do trade him, or they can cut him, still owe him $5 million, and then he can sign with whoever he wants as a free agent.
Yeah, well, that's a different story. Different story. Yeah. But to me, the fact that you have Buffalo, all right, according to the one book, which we can't bet on in New York, disclaimer, being only behind the Chargers as the favorite for the services of Cooper Kupp, you're not paying attention. I'm sorry.
I think and I think a lot of times when the Bills get listed as a favorite to lend this player or that player, it's because they know the history. Vegas knows that the Brandon Beane has swung deals like this, and people will put their money on Brandon Beane to throw around some weight and to get some of these players in. The thing on both of these guys that I feel like this is a PSA, a reminder to football fans that when you're talking about these players of significance being on the block, pay for production in the future, not for the production in the past. As sexy a name as Cooper Kupp is, he's not going to do ever again what he did when he was the Super Bowl MVP, when he was the wide receiver Triple Crown winner. That's not happening in Cooper Kupp's career again.
However, Myles Garrett can be all pro.
Myles Garrett can be all pro. Myles Garrett can get you double-digit sacks. What's that worth to you? And if that's the case, again, pay for future production, not past production. You're not paying for the name. You're paying for the production. What are they going to bring to the table for the 4 or 5 years that you have them on your roster? And I bring that up because I think a lot of us look at, and we would look at what Von Miller signed in Buffalo at and be like, that was a bad deal. I don't want to say it was a bad deal. Injuries happen.
Right.
But when you look at it now, it's like, well, we were trying to pay for production that just wasn't there due to those injuries.
It was a fun 10 games with Von Miller.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, that's it. 866-4FAN, 866-4326. You're always welcome to pull up a stool with us. Brad in Rochester. What's up, Brad?
Hey, actually getting Garrett is actually building for the future a little bit because, one, you have a window with Josh, and he's in his prime right now. You need a star on both sides of the line, and he is going to make a difference maker, and he'll make everybody around him better. He'll make the back end better because he's going to actually get to the passer. And we got that 5-year window with Josh where he's in his prime and he's going to be, stellar. Might as well just swing for that. Cooper Kupp I wouldn't touch because I think the injury bug has got him so bad that he's not going to do really well if you're paying him $20 million a year. I'd rather sign Cooper back than
could have
Cooper
Cooper
Kupp.
and Cooper.
Yeah.
Cooper squared.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it. Yeah, you're right about Myles Garrett. That's a point that we should just point out that, hey, if you actually had a pass rush, everything kind of looks better on the back end. Not that the Bills were void of it, but against a team like Kansas City, for sure. I come down here. 2 firsts, and which young player would you like? No, it's not a player that you're going to cut anyways. Brownie and Tasker talk, like, would you trade a Carter on the defensive line, a Solomon, somebody that is just brand new that you would have years to develop if you were the Cleveland Browns?
It's not uncommon, and they've done it. I mean, Wyatt Teller. You remember Wyatt Teller? Yeah. I mean, Wyatt Teller's, not as great the last couple of years, but, I mean, it felt like almost immediately once he got to Cleveland, he fit in immediately and became really good at his position. So it's not uncommon. It's happened before. And then there's another part of me, Gino, that wonders, why are we even having this conversation? Because it's all it's none of it's going to matter. Andy Reid's coming back in 2025, so there's no chance. There's no chance we're getting over on the big guy.
Oh my gogosh, Kelsey, floating me around the idea that maybe I could play another 3
Yeah,
years. Like,
what does it matter? I mean, we could talk about all these deals for the Bills. We're not getting over on those guys next year.
Well, that's why anybody who is like, I'm going to root for the Chiefs so they can just go away. No,
not happening.
No. Haven't you watched a horror film before? No, they're not really dead. There's going to be another scene where, like, oh my gosh, you're back. Yeah, that's the Chiefs. They're going to be back, and maybe the Bills win in the regular season next year. That's also part of the equation too. Okay, say the Bills don't get Garrett. Say the Bills don't get Cooper Kupp, and we're all in agreement. Yeah. We don't need Cooper Kupp. Yeah. And I'm saying that. But would you feel differently if Cooper Kupp ended up in Kansas City?
Cooper Kupp feels like Dallas or Carolina. I don't know why I'm stuck on those two teams, but they both feel like places where Cooper Kupp would go.
Carolina would pay him.
Yes.
That's an impatient owner who saw just a little spark. We need more.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be
those two teams for whatever reason feel like, and I know that the Chargers are the betting favorite right now to land Kupp. That would be easy and convenient because he's right there. But that's a run-first team. I don't know that Harbaugh is going to overpay for Cooper Kupp. Maybe it's a short-term deal where you have the Rams paying for a portion of that salary next season. But
let me throw out another team because it's not a team that we talk a lot about on the show. But let's just say they have a quarterback that a little divisive. They had one of the best tight ends in the league this year. They had the number 3 overall pick. What about Arizona?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where team and division. Cooper Kupp is a fun story here, and we're going to get a lot of these stories, I suppose. But you're going to hear me say this over and over again. Bring me some defenders. The one story today, and Danger and I disagree on this. Hey, what a great career for Micah Hyde. If I had to say, Danger, what would be – I have a particular play in mind. The Micah Hyde signature play for the Buffalo Bills.
I feel like it's the Patriots playoff game.
Yes, the win game where not the win game, the playoff win where holy cow, he came out of nowhere to pick that ball.
It was I mean, that was really like a perfect offensive performance, and the pick on Mac Jones, it was such an athletic play, and it really any momentum that New England it just crushed their souls. It was exquisite. That's the Micah Hyde play that I'll remember most from his time in Buffalo.
So he announces his retirement today. I don't know what the future holds. I guess he's going to be back in Buffalo playing, his charity softball game this spring. And I don't know if you can do that if you're on a coaching staff. Or not.
You and I differ on that. And Perino, we use Perino to break ties. He said that in his conversations with Hyde, he's never gotten the sense that he wanted to coach. If Perino's saying that, then I'll concede. I'll be like, it feels so much to me like Hyde is such a McDermott guy that McDermott would almost have to sell him to come here and be a part of this because he can teach it better as a player, as a former player, than McDermott can as a coach, as a former player who played it, but not at the level that Micah Hyde played it, right? There's more clout there. There's more weight there. And I wonder how instrumental Hyde was or has been in the development of guys like Cole Bishop or even DeMar Hamlin for that matter. And not that Hamlin is back next year. We don't know as a free agent, but you certainly are going to have Cole Bishop. You invested a second-round pick in that kid. Was Hyde instrumental? Did Hyde help him down the stretch? Was Cole Bishop's play improved with Micah Hyde in the building? Do you need somebody like that to work with your secondary? I don't know. I think he could do worse, and it certainly seems like he's got that leadership quality that guys gravitate towards. I just think about when I see like Al Harris, patrolling the sidelines for what, I think he was with the Cowboys last year, and you see the secondary of Dallas making these amazing plays and turning the ball, getting takeaways. It's like, it reminded me of what he was when he was a Packer and all the plays he made as a guy, as a DB in the NFL.
But like Ed Reed as a coach.
Not a great coach.
Not a great coach. Like, he would literally be at Havana Mo's smoking cigars.
Not a great coach.
No. But the idea of Micah Hyde, he came in and, which, okay, great. He was here in November and was on the practice squad and was the break glass. The coaching starts now. You're putting in 100-hour weeks basically. That's why so few of these guys, Danger, that achieve the top level and make wealth for their family actually kind of go into that end. Like everybody, Jim Kelly should be an offensive coordinator. Why? Let him live his life for any of these guys.
Yeah. And the other bit of Bills news from today is the hiring of an assistant defensive line coach, Jason Rebrovich, former Packers D-line coach, will be joining the Bills staff this upcoming season. He's back in Buffalo where he was a defensive assistant from 2013 to 2016. He's originally from Clarence. He played his college football at SUNY Cortland, so he's familiar with the area. This is a bit of a homecoming. He was here with Marone. He was here with Rex.
So 2 years at Alfred State, 2 years at Cortland. Cortland coaching staff. How do you make the jump? Basically, he kind of interned for Doug Marone for a year. So that's how you kind of moved your way up to Division I. Then Marone takes him up to Buffalo, and sometimes you just got to, have somebody to believe in you.
Yeah. Marcus West remains the defensive line coach for the Bills, so he'll have a little bit of assistance here with the hiring of Rebrovich, who was just in Green Bay as their defensive line coach last year.
So we got to be better at that. It's kind of that's.
Yeah. I mean, you're addressing the glaring weakness from what we saw out of this defense down the stretch. That defensive line. Let's get some better coaching in there. Let's get some more support for these guys. I don't hate the move. Mm-hmm. As Bobby Babich enters his second season now as Bills defensive coordinator. Fun show. Great conversation with Matt Perino of the Syracuse Post-Standard. Really loved our conversation last hour with Michael Leone, the Rochester Americans, to get his take on the lack of action. He didn't really give us much on that, which I can appreciate that.
He can't, but he can only talk about his experience. It wasn't even a question. Like, that Hartford team, you had somebody, even though he wasn't on the ice, run your goaltender. Well, you're going to pay for it. Oh, you're going to shoot the puck after the whistle?
It's on.
Bam, it's on.
Yeah.
And you could say there's no place for old-time hockey in 2025. I beg to differ on that.
I disagree. And I worry about the ramifications after the fact. Your instincts take over, and you do what you need to do. We didn't see that action on Sunday. Maybe we see a spark or some life from the Sabres, knowing that this has been a big topic of conversation in Buffalo. They're hearing it from their coaches. Did you say that they had a team meeting?
Yeah, and then, of course, who's going out there talking to reporters? Alex Tuck. He's the captain. He's got to do his thing. I suppose he's not the captain. I'm sorry, it's Darlene. But Darlene should be talking, too. But you shouldn't be having a team meeting.
Darlene's another guy, though. I mean, he's your team captain. When was the last time you saw Darlene get physical with somebody?
Meetings and conversations are for losers.
Ooh.
Do
I have a Take of the Year nominee from Gene Battaglia? We all agree.
Whenever you hear Kevin Adams, well, we had a conversation.
Yeah.
No. If you actually, doers don't have conversations. They just kind of get it done.
Yeah.
Don't tell me how much work went into the labor. Just show me the baby.
Take action. Take action. Or hit the bricks because you are going out.
Meanwhile, Kevin Weeks, NHL.com, like they've done a good job of propping him up as the insider, and he's goofy. He'll do a selfie, but you don't see his full head, only his forehead, and he tweets out cryptic things. Why did he this afternoon show a picture, not in winter, by the way, of Chippewa, Pearl and Chippewa in downtown Buffalo?
Mm-hmm.
Why? What is he saying? Does anybody care?
Mm-mm.
What would get you to care about this team? This is a professional major league team. Funny, I had put the word professional in. I could just have major league team down the road. We don't talk about it anymore.
They're an unserious team. What would get me excited? Well, I think the only thing that would get me excited is to see the continued growth and success of former Amerks that are there right now.
If Rosane, if that line combines to say, 3 goals tonight.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a team that you should beat. Columbus is in a playoff position. Huh.
And when I say former Amerks, I'm lumping in Seth Appert. I want to see continued success from not just the players that spent a good time of their youth here growing up in Rochester and developing as professionals, now playing at the NHL level. I think that goes for Seth as well. And maybe the time spent next to Lindy Ruff on the bench is exactly what the doctor ordered if they want to make, what makes logical sense to me, the coach of these guys when they were here, the coach of these guys when they're up with the Sabres. That makes a lot of sense to me. And I think he might be a better, I hate to say it, but I think he might be a better fit for the direction of the organization than what Lindy has been up to this point.
Well, here's the way I see it. You start here. Kevin Adams, is he back, yes or no?
I don't know, man. If you listen to the owner, he seems like nobody's going anywhere.
Right.
We're not firing anybody.
If Kevin Adams stays, then I could see Seth Appert taking over next season. I could see that.
Sure.
But if Kevin goes,
then Seth is residual. He's
he's
collateral damage.
You let the GM come in now, assess who they want, and you let them bring in their own guy.
That would make me sad. But we'll see. We'll see. We have that action for you tonight, 7 o'clock, here on the Fan. Rochester's team hosts Columbus. And we'll see what kind of effort they put out early on, knowing that there's been a lot of chatter around this team for all the wrong reasons. A team that's on a 3-game winning streak looking for their 4th win in a row against the Blue Jackets.
Can we give ourselves some credit here? Like, our audience doesn't want to hear. Let's break down Chiefs and Eagles and let's talk. Like, we haven't spent one single second talking about the Super Bowl.
Talked a little bit about Andy Reid just now coming back. I mean, that sucks. I don't like that.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, I think we're so over media day, right? Like, nothing really comes out of media day other than the platitudes and quotes that you expect. I mean, Travis Kelce, I can play for another 3 years. Okay. If you win the game, will you feel the same way if you end up getting engaged?
Gosh, Patrick Mahomes gives his take on the Luka trade.
Yeah.
Well, I really loved the Mavs growing up in Texas. It was fun. I can't believe it.
Yeah. Well, we will, before the week is up, we will talk a little bit of Super Bowl. We won't talk Chiefs, but we will talk Eagles. We'll have one of our Eagles insiders join us from New Orleans later on in this week. I can't believe it's here. It goes by. You know what it is? Football makes life go by too fast. There's my take. The football season is so quick. It's so fast. It's so exhilarating. It makes time go by too fast. I want to slow down.
I'm going to say you're off on that. Look at it a different way because we'll be done. I can't wait for next football season. No, stop. You're making time. You can't wish away time.
Yeah, that's
those
just
beautiful days we have in the spring and the summer, and there's other sports we can kind of get into.
That's just the actions of an addict, man. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, maybe I need to go to therapy, but as soon as it's done, I want another hit. So, you can't tell me that's wrong. It's not wrong to say I want football to come out. I'm not wishing time away. I just want my football back. Let's go. I'm ready for another season. As soon as the ride's over, I want to get back on. It's like that first time you go on Everest and you go up there and you're all the way up and go backwards and you get this rush of this I want to do it again. Let's go. And then you're walking around drunk and staggering around because you shouldn't go on a roller coaster twice in a row when you're our age. Just getting old.
Danger's mind sort of at the happiest place already.
We should get to a round of shots next on the Fan.
Yeah, there's, not too many trades do you talk about. I don't know. This is day number 3 overall, day number 2 here in the Sports Bar. We have more fallout here. We will talk a little more Sabres here. The ticket prices for the Super Bowl. If you ever wanted to go here, Danger, well,
I've checked it off my bucket list. I'm fairly certain that I'm satiated and I don't ever need to go back to a Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll never say never. And when I see these prices, I'm like, well, maybe I did it the right way. Maybe I did it at the right time, and it worked out okay.
Also, we got news concerning a couple legends. Not so good, actually.
Last call is your chance to get the final say in the Sports Bar. You can have the final call before we close up shop at 6 at 585-866-4FAN. We'll get to that right after a round of shots.
Like Ed writing in. Patrick Mahomes, you sound like Kermit the Frog. Yeah, that was the point, Ed. That was exactly the point.
Nothing gets beyond Ed.
No.
Thanks, Ed. More next on the Fan.
update.
Buffalo Sabres hockey tonight on the Fan. Isak Rosén going up from the Amerks to the Sabres. He'll be center in the line tonight with Yuri Kulik and J.J. Peterka. Tage Thompson not in the lineup. Our coverage will begin at 7 here on the Fan. Rochester to the Buffalo Bills. Micah Hyde, some really nice years as a Buffalo Bill, today officially announcing his retirement. The Bills name a new assistant line coach on the defensive side, Jason Rebrovich. Here's Chris Brown.
Former Packers defensive line coach Jason Rebrovich is joining the Bills staff as assistant defensive line coach. He actually was here previously. He coached under Doug Marrone and Rex Ryan from 2013 to 2016 as a defensive assistant.
Meanwhile, Chiefs head coach Andy Reid telling reporters he's going to be back next season. NBA tonight, the Knicks in Toronto, Boston playing at Cleveland. Gene Battaglin, the sports leader, the Fan, Rochester.
Bone-crunching hits, backboard-shattering dunks, bat flips, and hat tricks. 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
I was on in Rochester. I love those guys. That was such a great time. Honestly, dude, and I had a great time with the guys on Rochester. And by the way, I was doing that hit yesterday, and we talked NBA, and they did mention that they're not playing the. There's a rejoin of me, a promotion of me. Basically, the Bills window is closed. Which, if you're listening elsewhere in America, Rochester, Buffalo Bills country. Those guys are great. I love that affiliate. I love that city. We're very lucky to be on there. But they would play it basically like, the writer, the national guy who's on here, Bills are looking good. Apparently they pulled it because it's not as funny now. So,
well, I don't want to kick them when they're down.
No, I feel bad.
I do.
Dude, I love those dudes. I had such a great time with the guys in Rochester.
That's Bill Ryder, who you hear here on the Fan weekdays at 10.
I didn't think it got pulled because I heard it like 10,000 times.
Yeah, it got pulled because it was dated. Yeah. And by the way, I'm not saying it's over, but he wasn't wrong. What he said then is still true. We could still run that.
It's over. It's over.
You could run that today, and it would still be the same. It's the same thing. It's the same thing that we heard after last season, the season before, and I think it was. What was it, after 13 seconds that he said that? That he said that the window was... No, it was the divisional round against the Bengals.
The Bengals.
It was the Bengals loss where Ryder proclaimed it's over. The window is closing. It's over.
It's over. Yeah, well, we had, and if you missed that, you can go back on the Odyssey app and listen to that. Also, wherever you get your podcast. Bill Ryder was fantastic yesterday, and it's one of those stories, Andrew. We don't have too much. We're still talking about all the angles to this trade. Today, Luka Doncic introduced to the L.A. media, and adding to this mystery comes this fact. We know now Luka didn't see this coming. How? He just closed last week on a $15 million house in Dallas. According to former Maverick Chandler Parsons, Luka cried when he heard the news.
I feel so bad for the billionaire owner and the millionaire player who bought a $15 million house. By the way, my dishwasher is broken right now. I'm not going to cry about that, but I'm sure Luka will be okay.
Doncic saying upon hearing the news, he had to check and see if it was April 1st.
Uh-huh. Well, he's going to be fine. Luka's going to be fine. I don't know if he's going to be fine while LeBron is there, but eventually Luka in L.A. will be great. It'll be great for Luka. It'll be great. I mean, it'll be great for Luka unless Luka takes full advantage of all that L.A. has to offer. If Luka has some discipline, and he can learn that while he's a teammate of LeBron's, if he has some discipline, it's going to work out just fine long-term for Luka in L.A.
There are 7 games tonight in the NBA. The Knicks are up in Toronto. Yes, on TNT tonight. It's the Lakers visiting that new arena for the Clippers, but, of course, Luka will not be playing. By the way, did you see what he was wearing today?
Yeah, I called him. I want my sweater back.
Yeah, look, not very L.A. there. Boston at Cleveland tonight. That's the front end of that doubleheader on TNT. What do the Bruins, Lightning, and Rangers in the NHL have in common right now? They are all teams that are currently not in a playoff position. Ottawa, Detroit, Columbus, all those teams have jumped up. Buffalo at home tonight against those Blue Jackets. 7 o'clock here on The Fan. The next time Buffalo's home tonight, after tonight, February 22nd.
Buffalo has been in last place of the NHL for the better part of 20 years. So I don't know when the opportunity is going to come for them to start leapfrogging some of these teams that are having down years. It's very disheartening.
Here's a fun fact. Robert Kraft, his winning bid for the New England Patriots came in 1994. The purchase price, $172 million. The guy he beat out, Jeffrey Lurie. Lurie grew up in New England, and when he got shut out of the Patriots, he bought the Eagles then for $195 million. Bringing this up today because, well, Lurie shooting down rumors, he was putting in a bid to become the new owner of the Boston Celtics. The Celtics are on the block. The Eagles owner says, nope, that is not true at all.
Yeah, more guys I feel really, really bad for. I mean, to buy a franchise in the NFL for $172 million in 1994, what's that return on investment look like today? I don't know how these guys are going to get by. Really, really tough.
Well, I mean, is there anything like you buy a pickleball team, or they're talking about selling flag football franchises? Like, there's nothing in sports that you will ever see that return.
Okay, so I saw that cross my feed that Roger Goodell he said considering, but the word on the street is he's not considering it. Like, this is a full-blown push for the NFL to create a flag football league.
Okay. So in New York State, you have funding girls flag football. All of a sudden, poof, it's a sport. All these schools have a budget to pay for coaches and equipment and everything else that you would need in insurance and everything else. Wait a second. The Bills and the Jets and Giants are all footing this. Huh. Are they doing this to give back to the community, or?
No, eventually we're going to have flag football.
Right.
We'll have football all year long. The NFL as a brand will be a year. I mean, it already is, but you'll have actual games throughout the course of the year if they do it the way I'm thinking they're going to do it.
Well, they probably look at, well, the WNBA, if we can only develop our own Caitlin Clark.
And I'll tell you this, too. Where we talk about what you get on a return on investment, I think it's probably a safe bet that if they do a flag football league, it will be a success. I would invest in that.
I just hope that the NFL, like if we get in some sort of time machine 100 years from now, I won't be around to see this, but you get my point where I'm going to go with this. Isn't that where the NFL's going to look like someday?
Yeah. It already is. It already is flag football.
Yeah.
And the refs are being bought out so that the Chiefs can win. That's what's happening.
Do you want proof, Mike Danger, that Chiefs fatigue is real?
I mean, there's so many ways that we could prove that Chiefs fatigue is real, but tell me.
Ticket prices for the Super Bowl are tanking. Last week, they went down an average of 58%. This according to Forbes. The get-in price for the game, I say only because it's comparing to other years, $3,100. That's actually less than half of the average last season at $7,100. By the way, if you want the top stuff, that's still going up. 50-yard line seats going for $56,000.
I wonder if location has something to do with it, if New Orleans has something to do with the ticket prices being down.
Yeah, like that's a good point because Vegas last year, flying to Vegas, L.A. a few years ago. Well, New Orleans is a fun town, but that's not a town that's going to attract.
And it's a bad press at the beginning of the year. Like, is it safe? Is it not? What's up with New Orleans?
I hadn't even thought about that.
I don't know. I mean, I know that there's some people that probably are afraid. I wouldn't be somebody that'd be afraid to go there because of something that happened in January. But the only comparison I can draw is when I went to Miami when the Bears played the Colts in the Super Bowl, and I was at that game. And, man, it was a memory. It's something I'll cherish forever. I'm glad I could check that off my sports fan bucket list. But, if the cheapest price for this game is $3,100, that feels like the inflation that we just all have dealt with from, 2006 to where we are now, almost 20 years later. Yeah, that feels about right. That feels about a fair price to get in to go to that game, considering what I paid for a pair of tickets back then. I want to say it was $1,000 a ticket back then.
No,
so a pair of tickets was like $2,000, and hey, look, if you're a fan of the Eagles, if you're a fan of the Chiefs, and you've made it something that you have to go to see, when you're talking about what PSLs cost and what just the general price of being a fan is in 2025 and beyond, go do it, man. Don't do it at the expense of your livelihood or your mortgage. Don't add a second mortgage to your house. I know some people are crazy and would, but I wouldn't. But that seems kind of reasonable, actually.
Tiger Woods learned golf from his late father, Earl, but it was the tradition of Tiger wearing his red on a Sunday. Did you know this? It came from his mom. His mom saying that red was his power color. Bringing this up today, Clotilda Woods passing away at the age of, now, this is funny. AP said 78, ESPN saying 80. I'm not sure how old she was, but She leaves us today.
What is she, a baseball player from the Dominican? We don't know how old this woman is?
I don't know. Well, she met Earl while he was serving overseas. They were married 37 years, Earl passing in 2000.
I think in his statement he said something like she had a quick wit and a quick needle. And I hate that my mind went to when he said quick needle. I'm like, what, was she stabbing you with steroids all those years?
Oh.
I hate that my mind went there. We shouldn't be thinking that way. He's dealing with it, and that's a loss for him and his family.
Do you ever wonder, because Earl, when all that stuff with the golf club and everything else like that, when his image was shattered, how do you explain that to your mom?
Oh.
How do you explain?
There's a confidence that guy had, a swagger, a killer instinct that guy had at the height of his powers, that you can't explain it. You're not the same person that they know. What he was then versus what he became after it all blew up in his face, he's never the same guy again. He never could be the same guy again because he was exposed.
No, that's why, what was it, 2018, 2019? I never thought he'd win a major.
When he won the Masters?
When he won the Masters, I'm like, whoa.
It was amazing. It was amazing. And I don't know what fueled that. Maybe there was still a little spark of that killer instinct that he had inside of him, but his confidence was completely shattered. He was completely dragged through the mud. And I'm not saying he's a victim. He wasn't. We're all just a collection of our choices, and those were the choices he made. He didn't think twice about doing whatever he wanted to do, however he wanted to do it, with whoever he wanted to do it with.
How haven't we had the Netflix or some sort of Hollywood spin on this with all the mistresses, including the Denny's waitress?
Probably a series of non-disclosure agreements have been signed over the course of time, and we'll never hear from them ever again.
Meanwhile, another sports icon having a rough day. Not Michael Jordan, but this being his son, Marcus Jordan. Marcus Jordan, his son, arrested on charges of DUI, property damage, and personal injury, also cocaine possession, and resisting arrest. This took place in Florida on Tuesday morning. In 2012, Marcus pled no contest to disorderly conduct and resisting arrest in Omaha. Marcus, by the way, is no longer with Larsa Pippen, the ex-wife of Scottie Pippen.
Right. This was the weird, bizarre love triangle between Jordan, Pippen, his son, and Scottie's ex.
And then, of course Michael wouldn't be down with that.
I say it all the time, man. It's a crazy world. Someone ought to sell tickets. I'd buy one. Front row. That's amazing. Well, like we talked about with Andy Reid earlier in the week, I'm sure Jordan, probably has some regrets as to how his kids were raised, or was he there enough for his kids? I mean, he certainly provided for them, by being the greatest basketball player of all time, arguably. But at what cost? At what cost? Do you have regrets? Do you have any guilt? I don't think Jordan does, because Jordan is still that killer that I was just talking about with Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
Tiger Woods lost it. Jordan still has it, still to this day.
Laughing at Gary Payton in the dock.
Absolute killer. He is an absolute assassin. We will get to last call next at 866-4326, 585-866-4FAN.
866-4FAN, 866-432-6. The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
What? Merely having some stomach problems.
Excuse yourself there, Balky.
We are back in the Sports Bar. It's Danger and Battaglia. We're also 12. Last call at 866-4326. John joining us in the Sports Bar. Hey, John, you got the final say. How are you, buddy?
Hi, guys. How you doing? Pretty good. Oh, yeah, just, excuse me, I was just rushing to get inside here. I'm out of shape. Yeah, I wanted to just make a couple comments about the Myles Garrett situation. I think opportunities like this very rarely make themselves available in the NFL. And not that the Browns would trade him. I really think they would benefit because they need to rebuild. He's 29 years old, and he doesn't want to be around over the next 4 or 5 years it's going to take to get to that point. So I think if we were to trade a first, one of our 2 second-round picks, one of the 2 fourths, and a fifth this year, including a first next year, I think that would be a very generous offer. Maybe throw in a player like Kaiir Elam. And the thing about Garrett is that it's not just him as an individual player that's great. It changes the whole defense collectively. He's going to make every single defense player better and open up opportunities for, excuse me, Ed Oliver, Rousseau. The safeties will be able to lay back more. It'll literally transform everything because of his ability to totally disrupt and destroy the line of scrimmage. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that, situation.
Yeah, John, you just laid it out for us.
No question.
Yeah.
I agree with everything you said. I think that the trade compensation that he's discussing there is fair. I think it is going to take at least 2 first-round picks.
I would say if you're going to throw in a player, they're not going to want Kaiir Elam.
No, Kaiir Elam's trash. Nobody's going to want him. It's nice that we want to try and find a place for Kaiir Elam. I think Kaiir Elam's gone. It didn't work. We can just chalk it up as an L for Brandon Beane in the first-round draft pick. But appreciate the call, John. And, I agree with everything you said. He would make everybody better. We'll learn more about what led to this in Cleveland tomorrow afternoon at 4:25. Spencer German from our Odyssey Sports sister station, 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland, will be stopping by. I'm curious as to who's actually going to have the final say here. Is this actually Andrew Berry's call to make, or does he have the owner telling him, under no circumstances are you to trade that man? I think that's what is going to be fascinating to watch here down the stretch with this saga as it continues. We'll also be joined tomorrow by PJ Glasser, the host of Send It In on the BetMGM network. He stops by at 3:25. We'll get his favorite plays. Sabres hockey tonight at 7. JR Sport Brief next on The Fan Rochester. Have a great night.
You're listening to the Sports Bar with